I figure I'll just get the formalities out of the way. It's cool for me in particular to be having you on the show because, like I said, I don't remember what it was, but 2 years ago, followed you as a libertarian, and I really wasn't utilizing my Twitter much at the time. But thank you, Andrew. We hear her. Perfect. I don't know if you were with us last time, Andrew, but we did not hear her last time. We did not hear Mack. So, but glad to have another libertarian on. I've liked your point of view. It's been kind of one-sided. I've seen your point of view for the last 2 years, and I like a lot of the way you think, to quote Kanye West and Candace Owens. But now I'm trying to be a little more active myself, and I learned how to use OBS. So hopefully I can use that to my advantage for us to make some good conversation worth listening to. So I want to start off just by, I have a few people in my audience who aren't as well versed with libertarianism in general. So I just kind of want to get what your point of view is on what makes you libertarian and maybe what distinguishes you from other libertarians to start off with.
Yeah, sure. So I'm sure as many people may or may not know, I guess, there's a saying about libertarians that we're like cats. And we're very individualistic and we fight each other, and I'm allergic to cats and I'm an anarcho-capitalist.
I am too.
So it really fits in pretty well with what I think. So anarcho-capitalists, to a lot of other mainstream libertarians and people that are with the Libertarian Party, are viewed as kind of extremists, but to me it's just the most pure version of the philosophy. So for me personally, and for a lot of my friends, what libertarianism is three main points. That's private property rights, non-aggression, and self-ownership. Those are like the three core tenets of what we believe libertarianism should be based on and what it should be promoting to other people who aren't libertarian. So you'll have your minarchists who will say, well, we don't believe in no government. We can have very limited government. And that's kind of along with classical liberals who kind of border, and they might call themselves libertarians. They might not. And then you kind of have your mainstream Libertarian Party libertarians who kind of differ on the private property thing, though some of them might get mad at me if I say that. But there's all kinds of stuff. But those three core tenets is my personal philosophy. And I would definitely consider myself an anarcho-capitalist in that respect. Newly found, probably in the past year and a half. So I'm always reading everything I can, researching, and doing a lot of interactions with other people on podcasts and stuff like this to kind of
I think this is kind of how you grow. Because personally, exactly. I'll give you credit because you're taking more of a stance than I would. I'm only getting into the libertarian side of things. I will say I'm libertarian. I've learned a bit about minarchists, which is kind of where I think I lean towards. But there's also ANCAPs, collapsitarians, a whole bunch of stuff. And I like learning more about it. But as far as where I plant my flag, I don't know yet. I'm still kind of just a smaller, to me, it's smaller government, allow people the most access to the resources as possible, because that allows the free market to decide on a competence level. That's kind of just as quick and short as I can say it for myself, is don't let people on the basis of anything that doesn't matter not be able to be the best they can be. So
we work with that.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of just, and the funny thing is I didn't even know what libertarianism was for a while. Just like as a kid, I'm like, the Republicans don't know what the hell they're doing, and the Democrats don't. I got to figure something else out, and I don't know, just kind of got into stuff. But I think one of the things you'd mentioned was gender roles. Like one of the first times I reached out to you, I said something about gender, and I was thinking it more of on a philosophical level when it came to gender, not as much maybe the societal. Like, so it sounds like you were getting into the sociological side of gender roles in our society. Is that kind of what you meant?
Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking...
Yeah, a lot of what I talk about is more societal, not philosophical, which I'd love to get more into philosophical stuff. I just haven't researched that quite as much. So that's definitely something
that's what I've been doing a lot of research into, mainly because I've been doing research into Taoism. Actually, if I had to declare a religion, I'd probably say I am Taoist. I have a Taoist pendant. Doesn't mean much, but I wear it every day. I found that what it means is there's two energies. You know what I mean? The masculine, the feminine, the yin and yang, whatever. And it gets really corny for a lot of people when you start talking about that. there's always I think it's something about libertarianism too. Is I don't have it pulled up right now, but when you have the non-aggression principle as your founding tenet, that is actually a male thing. That is the masculine energy. Is because the masculine energy is the driving force, and that's not to say that women can't have masculine energy, obviously, which is an issue I've brought up. I've talked to women, they're like, so you're saying I can't? I'm like, no. These are just like two energies in the universe.
This is basic.
Right, this is basic level stuff. You're capable of it too. But the understanding is because the masculine is the driving force, it needs to understand that it needs to limit itself with a non-aggression principle. The female is the female, or the feminine is the receptive. And that's it's always the opposite angle of that. And the whole point of me getting into that is I don't think there is balance right now between the gender roles. I didn't really want to get into the deep philosophy behind it, which I would love to do sometime. But when you mentioned gender roles, I had my own definition. I kind of wrote something down. But did you want to start off with kind of where you see, or what maybe provoked you wanted to talk about gender roles, if you want to lead in?
Yeah, so I love that you brought up Taoism. I don't know if you know this about me, but when I was in college, I was actually a world religions major.
I did not know that, no.
Yeah, so a lot of people that are super politically involved, they were poli-sci or or business or something. I was kind of more of a artist soul, world religion. I actually wanted to teach world religions, and I'm super interested in Eastern philosophy. So it's really cool that you're into Taoism, because it's something I've actually, I think, kind of touched on my Twitter a few times. Not super deep, because I haven't got super deep into it. Right. But I love the concept of balancing energies and stuff like that. So I think
the thing I get the most out of Taoism in particular, because honestly, I think most of the people that I run into on a daily basis, I tell them I'm Taoist, they think I do it because I want to get attention. Right, I'm trying to be the special boy. Like, look at me, I'm doing something different. It's like, well, there's part of that. Honestly, if I can get that attention, I'll take it. I'm not going to deny that. Like, I'm not that. I have vanity.
Right, but everybody does.
I found it more as like an inoculation against this polarizing society we live in. Is that every time I see anything that's really polarized, I think about it on a philosophical level. I'm like, there always is something that is balancing this out. If something is extremely good, there's something that's extremely bad that, is going to hold this back. I want to take a step back from that, because we're getting into gender roles and I'm going back into philosophy. I want to roll myself back in. But how about this? Let's focus on men in particular for a second, because I think that's one of the things you've been focusing on your Twitter lately. And I don't know, we've just been talking. I have your Twitter brought up. So if there's any tweets you want to, I can search or pull up, or video I can have as a visual aid. But I think you've been talking a lot about men recently, and how, maybe not to paraphrase, but young men aren't getting the attention of some of their struggles as much as, say, women of the same age. Is that a good way to maybe sum it up?
Yeah, it's attention. And more than attention, specifically attention to issues that I think are arising in our society that I personally attribute to the lack of balance when it comes to men and women. Not even necessarily traditional gender roles, like people like to say, though that's my personal view. But there's just, I think everyone can sense a fundamental, like, it's almost like we're moving past each other, but we're not talking to each other, men and women. Like, we have these perceptions of each other. They're not really talked about. They're kind of innate. We just don't talk about it. And now with the rise of feminism, and in response in many ways, a men's rights movement, we're kind of seeing those things dragged out into the open for everyone. And it's kind of impossible to ignore, even if you're not someone who is you still have to interact with your city, your whatever, at work, or your family.
Your family
everybody
too.
Not everybody has brothers and sisters, but you have a mom, you have a dad, you have cousins, you have aunts, you have uncles. You see people go through divorces. You see, single mothers, single fathers. Everybody knows someone who's had to deal with a difficulty because of their gender, whether it's male or female.
Well, and I don't know if you get much into Jung, into philosophy, but I know some people think he's a crackpot because he was a very weird guy. So I do take his work with a grain of salt. Most of the best philosophers, psychologists in general they were normally guys, very lonely, and didn't get along well with others, ironically. They were very bad at practicing what they preached, but we're glad they wrote it down so that people could stew on it later. But the one thing about Jung is he talked about the idea of there being archetypal... He talked more about classes, but I always took the archetypal struggles. Like you have the archetypal, son trying to supplant the father. There's a lot of different struggles that I think people are dealing with nowadays, and they're overlapping a lot more. But like you said, it's ships passing in the night, but they're not saying anything. That I think if there's more dialogue between people, but they think that there's like this fake wall where it's like, I can't talk to you about my divorce, or I can't talk my parents' divorce. I can't talk to you about miscarriage. I don't know. I'm just bringing up like any traumatic experiences. It's like, I'm going to keep that in. We'll talk about all the stuff I don't want to talk about. And ironically, it's making everyone more depressed, more disconnected. And maybe I'm cutting to the core too quickly because there's more to it than that. But I think that is one of the big issues. It's people feeling like they can't talk about the stuff that's really weighing on their minds.
Right. And I get a little bit of flack, especially now that my Twitter is growing a bit larger, because I am a woman that is talking, especially lately, predominantly about male issues. And I do make a point constantly, every once in a while, to say, listen, I'm aware I'm a woman, and in a way, as a man, you're not going to understand a woman's struggles, and as a woman, you're not going to understand what men go through.
Right.
If we didn't have all this tension, you're not going to truly know. You can't literally step into someone else's shoes. But I think it's important that we try to do that. So that's what I'm doing personally by digging in headfirst to all this literature about men's rights and red pill philosophy.
Have you seen the movie The Red Pill?
As a feminist, writing about boys in school and how they're struggling with that. So that's what I'm trying to do, is put myself in other people's shoes as much as I can, but not tell them what to do, because I'm libertarian. I'm not going to tell men. I hate the phrase. This is one of my pet peeves. I'm sure there are tweets in the past where I've said this, and I need to go and delete them because I hate it. It's something I hate when people do, is when either a man or a woman says, real men/women do this. Hate it. I think it's...
Well, it's like you're saying, it's polarizing.
But it is. It's a toxic thing to put yourself into. It's a toxic space to put yourself in where, I want men to succeed. I want women to succeed. But my role is not to say, real men should do this. And as a woman who supports men, you should do this. And I think that's a trap that a lot of women consider themselves traditional conservatives, or tradcons as we know them online. They fall into that. They're like, this is femininity. I'm a woman, so I can say that. And also, I'm a woman, and I'm going to tell you how to be a man. And I think there's a fundamental issue with that.
Yeah.
So I just want to make it clear, before we get into this stuff.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you said that. Actually, you took a lot of the words out of my mouth. There's a couple points, and then you got to it. I had nothing to say.
My bad.
No. Actually, that's a good thing. It's nice to hear that I'm not the only person that thinks that way. Because to anyone who is watching live, we've chatted a bit, but this is pretty much the first time we're really airing out how we think, aside from Twitter, a couple times. But it's a weird place when you have women telling men how they think men should act, and when men start talking to women about how they think women should act.
Right.
It's touchy, but I think that even if it's completely wrong on either side, it's still good feedback to receive. Even if a woman's like, well, men need to just be more secure with their feelings and tell us how they feel. It's like, do you really want that? I feel like my life is my own petri dish, and one of the first things they tell you about psychology is like, don't psychoanalyze yourself. Do it all the time. Do it all the time.
Especially when you get into this stuff, you're thinking, wait, I think I do that.
Yeah.
Someone else does that. Oh no.
And then you mess with it for the next week or so and see if it's worth keeping around as a thought. But recently on social media, I saw I'm not going to reveal any names, but there's a girl, she was like, really wish, I forget exactly what the post was, really wish men would just say how they feel more often. Or something about my guy. I wish my, and I'm like, do you really want that? Because don't say you want that. And then have, men say, well, I'm really scared about this. I'm really, like, they're not going to be your boyfriend for much longer.
Right.
That's the one thing women don't understand is it's the grass on the grass being greener on the other field. It's like, well, if you were just more like a woman, I would understand you better. But that's exactly what makes there be balance.
Right.
And
which is, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to lead into kind of what when I looked at gender roles, I came up with I always try to bring things down to as simple of a phrasing as possible. Like, I speak Spanish and English, so I try to make things as easy as possible for me to translate, because I think normally in English. And it's funny because when I'm speaking Spanish, I'm normally translating from English directly into Spanish. So if I ever want to say anything philosophically or otherwise in Spanish, I need it to be simple, or else I'm not going to be able to translate it. So I looked at it this way. When the way things were with the nuclear family back in like the atomic era, the Cold War, it was normally the man was the value adder to the family unit, and the woman was the one who embodied the value itself. Whether it was creating the family, literally bearing the children, nurturing the children are the value of the family. They're the future of the family. And the father wasn't as much seen. It was the wife, and I'm going straight into like, what's the famous picture of the family dinner table, that nuclear family. But I think that's a good place to go, stereotypically, to start. It's like where you have the housewife, and she's the face of the family. She's the one that politically is interacting with the group, while the man's the one out there chopping logs and doing the stereotypical stuff. Now, I think that has changed, where now you're having women be capable of also not only being the value for themselves, but being the value adder also. And by contrast, you're having men who were solely value adders also becoming the value by having an Instagram, by taking, doing lifestyle and fitness stuff on Instagram. And literally, this is something that I don't really hear many people talking about, this phenomenon, because it's really only evolved over the last 3 years at most. Like, it was kind of flirting with the thing, but it's becoming much... I'm the oldest of all my cousins, and I'm seeing this change. It's like, what is their life gonna look like in 10 years, 15 years? Are you gonna be able to have that cookie cutter family that I referred to in the beginning? Can you just have that man who doesn't care about his appearance, but is a very good value adder? And by contrast, that woman who all she cares about is the appearance of her and the family, but doesn't care about bringing in any bread. I don't think that's the way things going to be in the future. And I'm just going to drop that there. What do you think of kind of what I said with this value versus value added concept, dichotomy?
Yeah. So I guess to put things into perspective, I come from a nuclear family. It's my parents. I have a younger brother, and then there's me. We're 18 months apart, so we're very close in age, my brother and I.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was adopted, and then my parents could get pregnant suddenly, so I got a brother out of it. So
works out.
So I come from a nuclear family and a lower middle class family. My dad worked 3 jobs to put my brother and I into private school because I cried when I had to go on the bus, and I thought public school was scary when they took me to one.
Public school was scary.
That's what I hear from my cousin. All my cousins went through public school. We're the only people in my family to go through a private school. And my mom ran a daycare out of my house for 20 years, but she stayed at home. So it was so weird growing up being one of the only people in my class, really, honestly, to have a stay-at-home mom. Everybody else, their moms were nurses, working 12 hours. Their dad ran businesses. That's just how things were. And when I would go over to the houses, we kind of be free range. It's like, oh, we're just hanging out. We're just 2 12-year-olds just hanging out because their parents are at work. Yeah. And then we would come to my house, and my mom would be home, and the other kids would be like, this is weird. Why isn't her mom working? She was running a daycare.
Right.
an insane amount of work, but from the outside it seemed, oh, her mom stays at home.
Not only that, the irony of it is that she's also being an entrepreneur.
Right.
That not a lot of people are used to parents being
right.
entrepreneurs. That sometimes it's the,
right.
You work for a company.
Yeah, right. And my mom was basically running her own business out of our house. Now that I look back, but back then, all my classmates are telling me, this is so weird. Like, why doesn't she do anything, basically? And looking back, my mom's like, I did so much. I was exhausted every day. I had to look after 7 or 8 kids. It's so much work. And then my brother and I. So, I kind of had a firsthand experience with kind of the olden nuclear family. Not so much because my mom did run a business. So technically she wasn't just a stay-at-home mom, but she was literally at home all the time. So
right. Well, my father is a high school math teacher. So he was home by 3:00. Summers off. He was around too. I gotta say, actually, my situation is kind of similar in that regard, in that my mother actually ended up being the one who works the longer hours, and my father's the one. But the funny thing is, it's when you talk about traditional roles of like masculinity or anything, is my father's normally the guy who's working on the house. He's always like, we didn't have a pool when we moved in, we didn't have a deck when we moved in, we didn't have all this, so. It's weird because he's around the house more, but it's because he's getting stuff done. It's weird how being around the house is a measure of, I don't know, is it productivity of like an adult? It's like if you're at the house, you can't be productive. Right.
Or if you're at your house, you're not doing anything. You're just, the few times I've talked about personally, if I do have kids, when I do have kids, my fiance and I have made the decision I'm staying home. Like, there's no, I had that, I want my kids to have that. We'll be in a financial position, thank God, that we can do that.
Your kids remember that. They remember it's something that they can do.
Right.
There's something you're passing on.
It's been imprinted on me. I remember how great it was to have a mom that could come to every single soccer game whenever she wanted, because she ran her own business. She could take off whenever she wants. The families that she babysat for totally understood because they were moms too, and she was taking care of their kids while they were at work. So, it's definitely, the few times I've talked about it, every stay-at-home mom says it's so much work. They're like, don't be disillusioned if it's something that you really want to do, but don't think that it's just going to be, I just sit around, kick back all day, and the kids.
It can be if you want, though. That's the thing. Is there's
Well, you could be lazy about it, of course.
Yeah, not everyone's a success story.
Purpose.
Yeah, not everyone's a success story. That's the thing.
Right, and that's their point.
Life doesn't hand you the rules. You make them as you go. I do want to make a shout out to Enigma. He goes, "Hey, look, it's the evil FBI skeptic sent to stop our beloved David Duchovny."
Oh yeah.
Is that an X-Files reference?
Yeah, I do a Scully, an Agent Scully cosplay from the X-Files, so.
I could see it.
Sometimes people just refer to me as that.
That's the funny thing is, I've been following you for quite a while, and I just ignore anything that's not political.
And a lot of people do. Every once in a while I'll make a tweet like, I don't know why some of you put up with the weird costumes for the political content, but you do, and I love you for it, because not everybody's into that kind of stuff, which is awesome. Because I could see some people scrolling through my feed, politics, and then there's a weird photo of me in a bodysuit, and they're whoa.
I'm the same way. But I put random Cleveland sports tweets in. So, it's I feel like I'm doing my part to represent the small Cleveland fan base that exists within Twitter. I feel the need to do so.
Not so much anymore with football. You guys might be gaining a little bit of a following.
Yeah, I bought my Baker Mayfield jersey this Christmas. It's the first Browns jersey I bought in my lifetime. Pretty excited.
Oh, yeah. But anyways, yeah, it's funny that you're good. It's funny that people refer to me as Scully because she's the skeptic in the show, and Mulder's like the believer. And I'm so, when it comes to conspiracy theories and stuff like that, I'm the believer. I will just sit and watch that stuff for hours and just be so entertained, and I'm always looking for different theories and stuff like that. So that's why it's kind of so funny.
Well, here's a conspiracy. What if you're her alter ego?
Oh no. Well,
that you look like her, but you're actually the believer.
Well, I don't know if you know anything about the actress that portrays her, but we're definitely diametrically opposed in political beliefs. We'll just put it that way. She's a giant
good idea to bet on Cleveland this season. I'm buying it. Sorry, I'm just replying to the chat.
Oh yeah, I think they're going to be really good this season. I'm not even joking. Like I unironically think they're going to be really good this season, which makes me happy because as a Chiefs fan myself, I hate the Steelers. So
there you go.
The more really good teams there and I love Baker. I think he's great. So the more teams that can kind of push them down, the better for me.
Oh, big time. Well, as a Cleveland fan, you know where I'm at with Steelers, so.
Right.
But
so, we are united on that front, at least.
Right. Well, actually, one of my good friends here in Chicago, he's a Chiefs fan. He goes to a Chiefs bar, and I've slowly become a slight Chiefs fan, but it's more like it's a vicarious fandom, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, definitely.
One of the other things that you had tweeted about was that Jordan Peterson video. And
the Liberty University.
I actually have it pulled up here, and I don't know. Can you see the stream on a delay? I figured I'll play the segment real quick for anyone who hasn't seen it, and then we can discuss the event.
Yeah, I've seen it. So if you just want to play it, I can listen and.
Yeah, I'll play it real quick. Hold up.
My name is David Libauschu. I'm unwell. I need help. I just wanted to meet you. I'm unwell.
David, say a prayer for him. Yes, sir.
Okay, so I just played the first 16 seconds. It's real quick. On the delay, I think I'm just starting to hit play. So I'm already talking about something that you're just seeing now. So the thing about it is that I say kid because I'm getting older, but the kid in the tape, he's definitely disturbed in some way, some mental illness, something is not right. And this is coming from someone who's actually, I've had some mental illness, but that's not the point of this podcast. I can empathize. Not only that, I've actually been to Liberty University. I've been in that convocation center. It's huge.
Oh, wow.
It's huge, first off. I had a friend of mine, he went to Liberty, and I stayed with him for a little while and actually got to go to one of their convocations. I can totally see this whole event going down. The issue I have, and I know you tweeted about it. I don't exactly remember what your tweet had about this kid rushing the stage, but I saw it as too much of a stock placed into Peterson the man. Is that, yeah, I read 12 Rules for Life. Actually, I've read it twice, and it's the second time I read it, I didn't get as much out of it, actually. And it was good, but I don't think I'm ever going to read it again. And the thing is that someone got so much out of it scares me. I don't use the word scare lightly either. It worries me. And what's your take? Because I know this is something you'd brought up and you tweeted about.
Yeah, I don't know if you went. I always creep on YouTube comments just for fun, whenever I see something like this.
Guilty pleasure. Yeah, me too.
And actually, David, the guy in the video, it was found out that he had bipolar disorder, and he'd actually gone off his medication. And this was kind of and this isn't speculation. Someone in the YouTube comments was like, I was there. I know this kid. He's, so he'd gone off his medication. I don't know why. I know a lot of people that have bipolar disorder try to do that kind of because it's hard to deal with when you have a serious mental illness that you actually need medication for.
Actually, I was diagnosed 2 years ago, bipolar. I'm not sure what that means, but it's kind of the point of me doing this whole podcast in general, but we can do that at a whole nother live stream. I understand exactly what the biggest thing about bipolar, for anyone who doesn't know, is it does create a whole amount of impulsivity that you can't imagine. I've never felt more impulsive in my entire life than the few manic episodes I've had. And you'll just do anything. Anything that your heart can put any weight into, you will just go. And that's what I saw out of him.
Right. And so when I read that comment, it was still disturbing, because even if you have bipolar, to react like that, like you said, I've read 12 Rules for Life too. Yeah. There were a lot of things in there that seemed like common sense to me. And I don't say that to be fruit, like, oh,
no, yeah.
But a lot of things, and Jordan Peterson actually kind of lightheartedly gets made fun of for this. It's like, he's like your dad telling you what to do. And it's like, Well, yeah, a lot of people, more than ever, actually, we have the most fatherless homes than we've ever had in history, at least in the United States. So it's really easy to kind of sit back and be like, oh, I don't get it. It wasn't that great. It was obvious things, but a friend kind of put it into perspective for me, because even though, I grew up at home with a dad and a mom, and I thought a lot of his rules were self-explanatory.
Right.
I was talking to a friend on the phone. I manage a Twitter page for him, and we just got talking.
Sure.
And we got talking about Peterson, and he said, I don't like him. And I was taken aback. I was like, oh, what? Like, he seems like pretty, like he's just giving people life advice. Like,
right.
But then he said, he bothers me because of basically what I just said. As someone who had a dad, I already know this stuff, and I don't understand how people don't know this. And that was the first time it was kind of ever put to me like that. I'd always heard criticisms of Jordan Peterson, but never that made that much sense to me. Because that makes sense to me. Of course, if all the stuff, you already kind of know it, you feel like it's common sense.
Right.
Especially when you see someone react like that viscerally and horrifying to just
he took a tremendous amount of risk doing that. Most people, you're going completely against social contract. I'll put it that way. If I'm putting it in nerd terminology, by rushing a stage, you're not. Actually, Enigma just chimed in. He said a lot of the point of his common sense stuff is meant to put into words things that people innately know but don't know how to articulate. I think that's actually a really good point. Peterson said that quite a few times. He says, I say the things you already know, I just say them in other words. And that's useful. I think really what we need to look at is, I'm starting to look at Peterson more of like training wheels. It's like, we don't, just because a lot of people know how to ride a bike doesn't mean we should get rid of training wheels. But the point also is that just because there are training wheels doesn't mean you should keep using them. That once you get the lesson out of it, you should move on. Understand that it's there and not deify it, which I think is what's the issue here. Cass just said that's the thing about Peterson, and I think he is 100% aware of this himself, is the common senseness of all of what he says. I don't think he thinks himself that grand of a thinker. I think he does. That's my biggest beef with Peterson lately, at least politically, what the man is doing for himself more than the movement he has. I see him as a deceptive person. The Peterson that is defending his brand versus the Peterson who's defending his movement. And when he's defending his movement, he sounds like an altruistic guy who has nothing but helping the dispossessed men fight get their father out of the belly of the whale is the thing he always says. It's a joke, but I've seen a lot of the things he's been doing behind the scenes, and this isn't a takedown, but the big point I want to make is, especially after seeing this video, is that anyone who does see Peterson in a greater light is to look at the man again, because no man goes on a speaking tour and charges as much as he does if he's trying to help people. I mean, he's going through the agencies that everyone else does. He's going through all the channels of someone who's trying to market and make money. And if his true goal is altruism, he wouldn't be doing everything he's doing. And he is going to a lot of... I'll take a step back. What do you think of what I'm saying? Do you think that the man is over-marketing?
Well, my main gripe with Peterson is, especially politically, like you kind of mentioned, I feel like he's disingenuous on certain fronts. And by that, I mean, he seems really staunchly against cultural Marxism and all this stuff. But then every once in a while, it's like he feels like he still has to signal to the other side and say, well, wait, both sides. It's like he's painfully centrist is the best way I can describe it.
That's an interesting libertarian
it's
point.
Such a libertarian point. And I don't mean that in a bad way.
I get you.
Right. In 2016, before I was politically involved, every time I took a political test, I was centrist because I hadn't found myself yet. I was still kind of navigating and finding out what philosophy was good for me.
Right.
That's fine, but when
especially as a young person, that's not something to disparage someone for not knowing yet.
Right. I mean, I still would have been in my late teens, early 20s at that point. So that's when most people are figuring out their lives. But Peterson has, whether he likes it or not, he's become this figure for young men. And it's like he wants to be this figure for young men, but he doesn't want anything else that comes with it.
Right.
And then he's profiting off of it. And I can't really describe it, but I'm kind of with you. I just get this eerie feeling, and, you know, that sounds really like my feels, but that's the only way I can describe it. Just something about the way he handles political situations and things that happen, like the Liberty video.
Yeah.
It just feels kind of disingenuous, and you could tell he was taken aback when the Liberty University thing happened. Like, I think he was generally like, whoa, like, I think he was choking up, actually, if I remember in the video. But and I'm not gonna lie, like, when I saw that, like, some people in the comments were like, it's staged, this is exactly something Peterson
it could be staged. The conspiracy theorist in me always will consider that,
and it could be, but I think it still gave me chills regardless of whether it was staged or not, knowing, especially reading all this literature about, you know, boys in schools and all this kind of stuff, seeing someone react that way, I guess just because of where I'm at studying these philosophies and stuff like that, it just got to me, even though I'm not like
it's a manifestation of the how do I want to put this in a way that doesn't sound bad, but the concerned parties that we're discussing is like, there's, you know, when you think of we got a couple comments to hit in a second, but when you think of the Jungian archetype, and actually this is one thing I did put in the description, I want to hit on this now before I get into detail. There's a guy, I don't know if you've heard of Vox Day. He's a bit of a he's a bit controversial in his own right. He's a writer, but in the description of this video, I put two of his YouTube videos that are actually, the production quality is really well made. There's two videos, one on rhetoric versus dialectic, which I recommend that to just about anyone. I don't care if you're politically left, right, centrist, libertarian, whatever. It's just good for communication. The second one is on the male social sexual hierarchy, which when it comes up to talking about Peterson followers, I think that's where it comes more into play, is he breaks down what the male social sexual hierarchy is in a way, and he looks at it as a fractal web, that it's not, no man is only an alpha, no man is only a beta, you know. You're an alpha at work, but maybe you're a beta at with your wife, and maybe you're a delta with your friends, you know. It's understanding where you are. And I think the problem is that Peterson exclusively is reaching out to the omegas, the, you know, the school shooter and above kind of demographic. He's looking at the bottom of the barrel. No offense, I've been there. And the thing is, if you constantly are catering to that, that's what you're going to breed for yourself. You're creating that audience. And you're right. I don't think he's ready for the responsibility he's put upon himself. I want to read Maps of Meaning. I haven't read that because it's curious. But if he is getting into this where he's becoming so influential to all these dispossessed men, is he now has to provide himself as a role model, and sometimes he doesn't. He says, like, I haven't been sleeping, I haven't been doing this, and, you know, like we were talking about the women, the concept of women. It's like, do you want your man who shares exactly how he feels? Do you want a role model? Do you want a Jordan Peterson who says, I can't sleep just like you? Or do you want the hero who says, no, I'm fine, everything's great? Is like, that's the one thing about Trump. This might sound like a complete shift, but the one thing about him is he does care about his appearance, and he does his best to never appear weak, because he understands that he is a symbol, you know. And I'm not going to get into more the politics of Trump, but that's one thing Peterson doesn't understand, or at least doesn't master.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, honestly, that's something I've personally, not to say I'm emulating Trump.
So human being is fallible. Hold on, before we go further, I do want to address these comments real quick, because Bro Mira's just said, so human being is fallible. That's true. I get that, but when you get the amount of fame that Peterson has, is you have elevated yourself to a higher metric of being judged. But Enigma said, I think he sees himself as a gateway to Jung, Freud, and other higher level stuff. But he said himself that he's a dirty capitalist and has to protect his brand. No, that's true. And I do think that Peterson is still a net positive. I just think that once you get to the end of his content, you don't always know where to go, potentially. But yeah, he has outright said that he is a dirty capitalist. And then Vermeer said, couldn't those prices simply be the result of supply and demand? And he does have hundreds of lectures freely available online. Yeah, he does. I don't know. As a libertarian, I'm fine with him spending or charging people what he does. It's not a matter of prices. It's not a matter of that. The problem is sometimes he has a bit of a messiah complex to himself that he seems bipolar sometimes, because sometimes he looks like he wants to take this huge mantle and other times he's complaining about having the mantle, of being the Moses of the dispossessed. Moses never complained about it, he took it on head first, and I don't know where I stand. I'll put it this way: Peterson is still something I'm messing with myself. He said, being an archetype is hard. I don't know if Peterson fancies himself or is capable of handling himself as one of the mythos he preaches about. It's a net positive, but he's still human. Yeah, that's precisely what I'm hitting on. I think you're on the same page as me. Do you think that it's Mackenzie? Do you think that it's unfair, the amount of scrutiny that Peterson's under now, given his success?
I kind of consider, I just criticized him as painfully centrist, but I do get kind of the same criticism. So, for example, something I constantly tweet about is, I'm not going to apologize for things that I've said that I can factually back up and that I meant, no matter how offended someone is at it on Twitter. And because of that, I have received backlash and criticism that I am treating myself as some kind of almighty truth giver and kind of this guru for men. And I kind of touched on it at the beginning. That's never what I intend. Absolutely not what I intend. And I actually just tweeted a few days ago and said, listen, I get emails. So ever since I put a business email, I get emails. I got this email from this guy. Obviously, I'll keep it confidential, but let's just say it was 3 paragraphs, and it was hard for me to read.
I can imagine.
I have 13,000 followers on Twitter. In the grand scheme of things, that is nothing. That is not any kind of influence in the grand scheme of the world. But because of what I talk about, like you said, Peterson attracts these guys, I think I'm attracting that as well. Mm-hmm. And I tweeted earlier, I think yesterday, the day before, I didn't ask for that. I'm not a guru. If you want to reach out and email me, whatever, absolutely. I'd rather be there for someone and try to deal with that. And I can't imagine the emails that Peterson gets. But
oh, yeah. Well, hell, I know I sent him an email back when I was dealing with my initial diagnosis. Not, right. and the funny thing is when I say all these things I've been saying about Peterson, I was deifying him at one moment. That, like, when I see that video, I'm like, that was me about a year ago. I could totally see myself happening. The thing is, I bring it up because it's like, if I felt this way and someone's actually manifested it at an event, how many other people are there? Probably right now, not watching this stream. Hopefully not. If you are, speak up. We'll talk it out. But no, if you're in those dire straits, the world seems so small. And when you find someone like Peterson, it makes the world seem bigger. But the problem is, I think that when people free themselves to seem like, oh, okay, my problems have been stated by someone else, it's like, okay, now I have the freedom to talk about it whenever I want. That's not how it works.
Right. And just the other day I get messages to my public Facebook page too, my political one. A guy the other day, basically the gist of his message to me was, hello, introduce himself, and then asking me if he should bother finding someone to spend the rest of his life with.
Oh, I do remember you tweeting that about that.
That's a huge question, first of all. And
well, just the fact that you take the gravity of it just goes to show your constitution.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean,
think of other let's give yourself for a second, because I could tell you're thinking about it heavily. Is give yourself some credit here, because think of how many other influencers or whatever on Twitter would just give their knee-jerk response of what they think the person wants to hear. You're actually taking the time to think about it, so.
Well, it's a big question.
It is.
It's something that when I get these messages, it's not like, so a lot of people say, so first of all, I'd like to point out that my audience has grown to 20% women. So not only men follow me on Twitter, so girls are coming in, they're getting there. And I do get messages from women too saying, I feel like I can't talk about these things with my girlfriends, so thanks for doing that.
Cool.
Which, though that, I'm happy that I'm there saying it for somebody. But when I get these messages, it makes me, like, I just get emotional sometimes, and that might just be the woman in me. Like, some guys might be like, whatever. But I feel like people act like everyone who's going through this stuff, and even Peterson's fans, not you, of course, we've talked about that, you came from that place too, but some people really do act like everyone who finds any solace in Peterson or the things that I'm saying, or even books like Christina Hoff Sommers that's wrote, The War Against Boys. If you come away with any of that and you agree with it, you're a misogynist. And I'm like, if you could read these messages that guys are sending me, it's not from a of I hate women. They are so lost.
It's survival. It's well, here's one of the misconceptions. It's a survival thing. While I think the irony is some of the let's say hateful women, the spiteful women who are attacking this group of men, which isn't it's a small demographic of women, but I think they see these men.
They're very loud though.
Oh my gosh. Well, there's actually one I follow on Twitter just to keep tabs with the radical feminist side, because I think it's hilarious. She's sent her minions after me a couple times, but the flying monkeys have attacked. But they can talk about these men, and they think that these men are coming from a place of power, that they're exerting masculine domination on them, while it's like, no, some of these men are literally just fighting for their like place in the world, and like maybe their response came strong to you, but if you look at the context, I think the biggest problem in general with a lot of issues across the board is people aren't taking context. Like
exactly.
There's no room for nuance for a lot of people. They see things at face value as a reflection of the way they see things, and it's like, well, it's got to be that way, But hold on, because actually, Bromirs and Enigma have been keeping up with us. So Bromir said, "That's true. I wonder if that is what happens when you take a regular person, catapult them into infamy. I feel like he's handled himself very well considering." Talking about Peterson. I think so too. As much as I'm criticizing him now, I agree with you. What his book did was made me hold myself to a higher standard. And so by contrast, I feel the need to hold him to that higher standard as well. So that's why I do it. And then Enigma says, social media criticism has absolutely exploded and is an overwhelming force of nature that none of us can really control. A sort of gluttonous insatiability, all-consuming mother archetype. That's a mouthful. Actually, that's pretty solid too, I'd say. Saying that I think the biggest thing is to remember that it is simply social media. That if you put that much weight and that much stock into your persona on the internet, when that house of cards falls down, it's gonna be hard on you. But that's what actually got me to start being more active on Twitter. Is I was very self-conscious of like the people in my family and friends and whatever. Like if I started getting political and stuff, I'm like, you know what? At the end of the day, this is how I feel. I don't care what they think. Not to say that I don't care about them. It's just my thoughts aren't that offensive. And if they are, tell me about it. I will change the way I think. And that's just, me addressing social media criticism is I used to drive myself to panic attacks over certain things. Like I'd post something and be like, oh God, I wonder if so-and-so saw that, you know? And then it wasn't until I posted it, saw nothing bad happen. I'm like, oh, I can do just about anything now. And that's really what this fight for kind of like internet censorship is on Twitter. I don't know if you've been following a lot of that stuff. We're kind of changing gears again here, if you don't mind.
Yeah, before we move on, I just want to say one thing. I think, kind of touching on the internet call-out culture, as I call it.
Yes.
Phenomenon. What's so funny, I shouldn't say funny, it's ironic, about the call-out culture on the internet is, I don't know if you kind of see, sometimes when people are going back and forth, the other person will respond to the other person and say, who hurt you? Oh, yeah. And it's kind of like a joking, spiteful, who hurt you that you feel this way. But it's odd to me that third wave feminists in particular can clap back at someone and say, well, who hurt you that you think this way? But they can't step outside of their own ideology when it comes to all these men that are hurting and think, well, what is hurting these men? Literally, quite literally, who hurt these men or what in society is affecting this? About that because of the oppression dynamics and all this BS, but they can clap back right away and say who hurt you to someone that tried to come at them on Twitter, but they can't do that with people that they know in their lives that are expressing these concerns. Right. So I just think
actually Cass just made a good point. He said to go along with the ubiquity and anonymity of the internet, every keyboard warrior has an opinion and they're willing to share, especially with no repercussions. I think that's the really biggest thing about social media in general, is that there's no skin in the game for most people. And here's to go back to what I was talking about, my anxiety over social media, is I held myself to this like high standard that I realized not many people do at all. It wasn't until I like lowered my own bar that I realized everything goes on the internet. And that's not a good thing, I think, is you have all these people coming from different points of view as far as like what their standard of what acceptable dialogue is. And I'll get people who like literally, I mean, I don't know. We could talk about Twitter till the cows come home, but you get weird points of view hitting each other at different angles. And I really think it's, a lot of people rag on the internet. I think it's one of the best things is I tell people I'm active on Twitter. They're like, oh, you're one of those people. I'm like, damn straight I am. Damn fucking straight I am. Because at the end of the day, I don't care if it's one person or 10,000 people that see one of my tweets, that if I'm wrong, they're going to tell me, and I'm going to, it's actually my pinned tweet. If I'm wrong, they're going to tell me and I'm going to be better for it. But if I'm right, I'm going to make someone else's life better. It's a win-win. And what I found is actually, this is one of the principles of Taoism is one of the main tenets is action through inaction. And I actually am going against that by going out and trying to change people's minds. You'd said something about the non-aggression principle. And I do go against that. I completely go against that. Is like, if I see something wrong, I try to correct it, which is not a very libertarian point of view. But I see it as a productive conversational point of view.
I actually, kind of touching on that, so the non-aggression, I think one of the most easily molded to whatever your own beliefs are parts of libertarianism. And I see a lot of people say, well, it's non-aggression, so that means live and let live, and you shouldn't be telling other people what to do. But right. I fundamentally actually disagree with that. Okay. Which I tweeted a day or two ago. To me, libertarianism is not letting everything slide. Let people can live how they want. But me expressing my own personal preferences and showing you data, say, hey, you can live this way if you want, but just so you know, according to data, I don't think this is a good idea. To me, that's not diametrically opposed to libertarianism at all. And I actually get called like a conservative Republican and all this BS because of that. But to me,
you might be more civil than I am in general.
Well, now I am. But remember, we kind of talked about before we started the stream, I used to be quite quote tweeting everybody
yeah.
on everything they said and being like, I can think what I want. What do you mean? You know, you're stereotypical libertarian.
Right.
But now I'm just like, listen, you can think what you want, but if I think something's wrong, I'm going to point it out. So I think Taoism might be a little bit more in line with libertarianism.
But there's a difference between what we're talking about and like the call out culture you brought out. That's
totally.
That's completely meant to just sometimes slander people. You just make things up. You're just trying to make people look bad because it benefits you, not because there's something inherently, logically, irrationally wrong with what they're doing.
Yeah, before I even had a Twitter following, when I had less than 1,000 followers, I got doxxed and was called a Nazi because I was rolling around free speech balls on college campuses with Young Americans for Liberty. So the slander thing and the fear that you're going to get attacked because you are saying what you think, I totally understand that. Like we talked about with call-out culture, it's basically to like, in my opinion, it's totally to shame people. But, you know, sometimes... I'm not going to say sometimes shaming is a good thing, but
no, I'll get behind that if you won't.
It can be a way to shape your culture in kind of a collective way that you want it to go. Only now that's kind of been turned on its head. And instead of kind of doing it from a moral standpoint, people are just doing it just to beat people over the head and get them to back down, no matter if they've looked into what that person is saying or not. So like you said, that, you know, the third wave feminists will send their flying monkeys after you.
Right.
They don't care. They don't care if you're correct.
Well, and my issue with that is they never look back. They never learn their lesson. That's why I stopped engaging, was because I realized, and the funny thing is I started engaging with the monkeys and started to red pill them, ironically. And I was just like, oh, and they'd get really angry with me. It'd be this like fever pitch angry, like, you're just one of those men. And I'm like, am I? And I'll just ask them just classical conversational questions. Right. And I'd just be like, what's the real problem? And then they'd be like, oh, okay, so you're actually a nice guy? I'm like, yeah, I am a nice guy. I just like to get ramped up and use rhetorical points to instigate things and make conversation more fun. But
I'm always saying to people, anytime there's a misunderstanding, I'll always tweet out the same thing. I'm like, if you want to know my position on something, ask me.
Yeah.
That's as simple as it is. We're having a discussion about gender roles. We're asking each other questions. Well, what do you think about this? What about this? If people would just take 2 seconds before they got in a tizzy over a tweet and say, well, is your position this? I'm just clarifying. That, you know, of course, that's too hard to do on social media when you can just type things out. But, you know, if people would just take the time and do that, it would
solve a lot of issues. It would solve
probably 80% of the arguments on Twitter. And I'm not even talking about like the call out tweets. I'm just talking about general conversation. Like there's this tendency to always take people's responses to you negatively, and that's something I find myself getting caught up in as well. Like, oh, well, they must be trying to say this. Ask them if they're trying to say that, and then if they say yes, you have my full.
I think one of the biggest things is getting into history and words. Is some people just don't know history.
Yep.
They just don't know. They just never read. Like, to me, I can't, as someone who read for the first half of my life and is like a recovering nerd, like, I don't know how some people don't know where certain countries are. Like, let's just go from there. Where's Germany? Okay. So you're going to tell me I'm a Nazi. Okay. You can't even find Germany on a map? Get the fuck out of here. Come on. You can't tell me I'm a Nazi. Like, I'll tell you things that you can't even get in school about the Third Reich coming up if you want to talk about it. And it's just things like that. People using these buzzwords when they don't understand the real implication of what they're trying to say. But I want to take a step back because that's a good thing. We have a couple comments we didn't address. Cass has said, unless you're a blue mark on Twitter, it can be hard to find out who you are. Or you find out who you are? Unless somebody hires a hacker. I think he's just saying it's like, yeah, I don't know. Most people I follow on Twitter don't have a blue check mark.
I was doxxed when I had less than 1,000 likes on my Facebook page for my Facebook page.
Now, I've heard the term doxed used before. And when I think of doxed, it's when you reveal private information about a person. What happened to you in your doxing? I'm not, unless you prefer not to discuss it. I'm just curious because I've only heard. I haven't heard many firsthand accounts. I'll put it that way.
No, I've told this story in an old video. I'm thinking about remaking it because when I mention it, people are like, "Whoa, what? That happened?" I'm like,
yeah, that might be a good idea.
I might just make a story time video or whatever on it. That way I can just link it. But basically, 2016. So actually 2 years ago this month, I had somebody kind of trolling through my public Liberty page. Like I said, it had less than 1,000 likes. It might have had less than like 500 likes. It was very small. I just kind of posted there every once in a while. And I would post, I used to do vlogs of when I would go to campuses and roll around free speech balls.
Interesting.
And this communist educator Facebook page logged on and started going through my page, and I banned them because I was like, listen, this page is my property. If you're just going to troll, I'm not about that. So I'll just ban you.
Right.
They hopped on another account and they posted my address, my home address. It was the correct address. In my comments, with the tagline, "This will be distributed to local Antifa because people should know where fascists like you sleep."
Oh my God, that's literal terrorism. That's literal terrorism.
It was terrifying, because I was someone who, at the time, that was my job, was to go to campuses. My job was full-time activist. I went to campuses and did this, and I'm like, great, now when I go around, if I'm posting these vlogs and they know where I'm going to be and they know where I live.
That can be dangerous if you're not walking with a crowd. Yeah.
And I'm a, 23-year-old, so, it was a scary thing. So, I had to tell my dad about it.
Oh, yeah. No,
at the time,
definitely.
it was not only my house, but my parents' house. So honestly, I was more concerned that something would happen when I wasn't home.
Brick or something.
People could SWAT you, call it to your house and all kinds of business. So I had to tell my dad. So of course he's, well, what did you do? I tell him and he goes, what? Like, just dumbfounded.
I'm sorry, you said it, but what was the instigating act that got this person to set their sights on you? I'm sorry, you said it once.
Yeah, they didn't like, I used to post video blogs on my YouTube channel. If you go to my old videos, there are some.
They just didn't like the videos?
They thought that, they basically took me rolling around a free speech ball on college campuses as an act of aggression.
Oh, God.
So, yeah. So
if the opponent is that pathetic, at least
unlike a beach ball's aggression, my state's constitution. Let's go. I don't know what you want me to do. So nothing ever came of it. Basically, I know people that know people, and the person was tracked down, and a phone call was given to them.
Okay.
By law enforcement, but nothing ever happened. Nothing's happened since. It's been 2 years. I don't expect any. I think quite honestly, the person was a middle-aged grown man. And I'm like talking in his 40s.
Yeah.
Threatening a 20-something-year-old, and I think he got, for lack of a better term, the crap scared out of him because law enforcement was like, "Hey."
Yeah. Well, that's the response that needs to happen when somebody. Yeah. I mean, doxing is it's sad. To me, it's
pathetic. It's coward tactics.
Very low.
It's the tactics of people who have no stock in their own ideas. So, and I've ran into libertarians who are like, it's not aggression. They're just releasing information. And I'm like, people have literally been shot by SWAT officers who have
dogs killed, property damage.
People have had
not to mention that's a traumatic experience.
Yeah. So
let's be real. No, there's not one good thing about doxing or.
No,
I'm sorry that happened to you. That's not fair at all.
I kind of look at it as like a learning experience, and when people kind of say, "Well, you're not important enough for people to do X to," I'm like, listen, I'm surprised that hasn't happened again, just because it happened when I was not really vocal about a lot more polarizing issues, to be quite honest. Most people, unless you're literally Antifa like this guy was, you support free speech. You're like, cool, sounds good. College campuses, awesome. It should be free thought. Right. And now I talk about gender roles and all this like serious stuff that people get really emotional about. So I'm surprised that it happened that early, but there's not really anything you can do about it. So when people talk about anonymity on the internet, to be honest, I'm all for it because I think there's a huge reason.
That's one of the things about my Twitter is I used to be anonymous, but I'm like, you know what? Dox me. Yeah. I said, I'm just going to go with my name. I live in, well, here's the thing is, I'll dox myself. I live in downtown Chicago. You want to come and get me? Come and get me. You know? That's the thing. It's part of why I moved here to Chicago is I heard all this stuff on CNN about all this bullshit, and I wanted to see how much of it's true. And a lot of it's true, but there's also a lot of good here. That's I don't know. I've already seen marches. It's been hilarious, but
yeah, a lot of people ask me, they're like, because at the point that happened to my Facebook page, my Twitter was well under 1,000 followers.
Okay.
And they're like, well, why wouldn't you go anonymous after that? I'm like, because it's already out there.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, if anything, now you're freed. Yeah.
Right. I'm like, realistically, what are you going to do? I'm
the only other thing would be just quitting, and you're not going to, well, I mean, you could quit, but you haven't.
But I'm not going to. I repeatedly say that. I'm like, listen, I've already been doxxed. People have already called me a Nazi and all this is BS. So for a lot of people, that's the worst possible thing that could happen. And I think the fact that I haven't quit after that says something. But like you said, for me, I understand why people want anonymity, and I think it's important. But for me, it's not really an issue. I mean, like I said, I know a lot of people are scared about their jobs. If I lost my jobs, it would be fine because I do have someone supporting me. So it's not really a big deal for me. So, and that person doesn't have social media. So it's like, if you want to try to come after me, I guess go for it, but it's already been done. So
right. Exactly.
The worst has already happened, basically, in my mind. So
right. You already experienced your first event.
Right.
Couple more chats because I'm appreciating people getting involved and they're right there with us. This is actually a little further back when we were talking about call out culture is wild. It's like an island of cannibals who only eat people from other islands. And when the other people stop visiting their cannibal island, well, they got to eat. So it's funny. That's true. That's exactly what it's like. It's a selective. My friend, we call it bubble world that people live. They make these echo chambers, and the funny thing is, as soon as there's like overlap, it's just it's chaos and war. It's like, well, why don't you just free trade of ideas, like you would consider out of two sovereign nations, which. Libertarians have a different stance on that, but I'm talking in the ideal. Also, libertarianism to me is leave me alone and I'll leave you alone, but people can't well enough alone. Yeah, I can't. I'll tell you that. I think it's mostly just because I'm young and dumb, and I'm not afraid to admit it. I still have a lot I want to learn, and I think leave me alone and I'll leave you alone. I just don't learn enough by leaving people alone. I think tact and diplomacy are very important. Obviously, you don't want to burn every bridge you come across, but that's one of my biggest issues with the libertarian is I think it's knowing which people to leave alone. It's not. That's kind of the only addendum I would give to that, Bromiris, is some people, one, might not want to talk, but would benefit if you did. And two, the people who want to be left alone the least are probably the people who need to get engaged with the most.
Yep.
A couple quick more. Live and let live unless it's harmful to others. Bad ideas, bad thoughts are still harmful. There's nothing wrong with trying to correct others' actions. Just don't resort to violence if you can. That's very similar to what I was just saying, except you're going more off the danger risk principle, which is that's more actually succinct. Recovering nerd. The book that changed my thinking the most was Thomas Sowell's Basic Economics, followed by Black Rednecks and White Liberals. Can't say I know the second one, Basic Economics by Thomas Sowell. I'm sad to say I have not read. Have you had a chance to read Sowell?
Yeah, I own Basic Economics is really good, and also he has a book about wealth and poverty that's really good as well. And they're both. I think he's one of the easier people to read. A lot of these economists and philosophers and stuff like that, it's kind of dry, but the way he tells things from personal experience kind of makes it a lot easier to digest, especially with the wealth and poverty book.
Yeah. I mean, every quote I've heard by Sowell, I'm just like, yeah, Sowell is very based.
Oh, yeah.
He's very
based.
His
interviews if you watch interviews with him, any of them, he's cold.
That's the thing too.
He has
cold.
no problem just calling out, being like, flat out, you're wrong, here's why.
Yep.
There's no BS.
There's something special to me about somebody who can just dismantle someone in an argument without getting emotional. And that's Thomas Sowell. He just like, it's just like a robot readout. It's like, this is why you're wrong, and I will tell you exactly why. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know where we're at as far as right now. I have time. I just figured this would be a good point in case you did want to end. We could always have you back on again. What are you thinking, Mac?
Oh no, I have the rest of the night. So if you keep kind of rolling off the chat.
We've got 12 people watching now, which has already broken my record for any live stream. So thank you to everyone else. But glad to have Mac on here. So how about this? We'll just make a general call if anyone would like to change our direction, because those are the only points I plan on hitting today. So if you guys want to get us to start talking about something else, unless there's something you'd like to talk about, Mac. Oh, how about this current event? Candace Owens at the was it the Judicial Committee? What was the committee she was in before?
She was
because it was for hate speech
hearing in Congress, over Facebook banning what they think is white nationalism, which is apparently Candace Owens, because that makes sense. Yeah,
actually, I forgot that I did pull this up in case I have the C-SPAN footage. I'm gonna play that real quick just to highlight this point. I forgot I did have this.
It is not proper to refer disparagingly or to a member of the committee. The witness will not do that again.
The witness will not do that again.
Sure, even though I was called despicable.
Witness may not refer to a member of the committee.
You'd have 15 viewers if you showed more skin.
That's not what I said. That's not what I said at all.
Oh, wearing a long sleeve, my bad.
May I continue?
Please.
As I said, he is assuming that black people will not go pursue the full 2-hour clip. And he purposefully he cut off, and you didn't hear the question that was asked of me. He's trying to present as if I was launching a defense of Hitler in Germany, when in fact, the question that was asked of me...
This is what I wanted to bring up, though. Ted Lieu looking all creepy. You can look up the accusation he made. This is Candace Owens. I'm playing a video of Candace Owens defending herself. But you can tell just from the screenshot I left it on, this is not a man who is standing by his morals when he's making this accusation. This is a man politicking. To anyone who doesn't know what this was a response to, Ted Lieu took a 30-second clip of Candace Owens saying that nationalism is not necessarily a bad thing, and that Hitler went over the line when he tried to do things past the interest of Germany, essentially.
Yeah, and I know I commented back on Twitter, but for the people that didn't see it, you can really tell. So for the people that don't know, the full clip of what Candace Owens said is only probably 1 minute and 15 seconds long. So the fact that he took 30 seconds to show tells you a lot, because he could have played a minute. Really, if you're going to play 30 seconds, you can play the full minute.
Well, I love that he took the microphone and put his phone up to the microphone.
Right, like, oh, you need to see it too. Like this isn't fake. Like,
well, no, to me, I'm like, couldn't you have prepared ahead of time and had it like on a projector or something, bro? Like, come on, this is the government of the United States. I'm paying taxes for you to have something better than a microphone and freaking phone.
I saw someone tweet earlier the picture of him holding it up to the microphone, being like, is this photoshopped or did he really do this? I'm so confused.
Well,
like, why would
I saw people who already photoshopped that.
Of something.
It was a picture of him next to Obama, and the meme was, I have black friends, see? It was him showing a picture of him and Obama. I was just like, the memes are going to be great for this already. I can't wait.
Yeah, it was totally, and I said on Twitter, I'm no super fan of.
Oh, shout out to Enigma. I think he's got to go. He's been good in the chat. He says he got to get up at 5 a.m.
Oh no! Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, glad to have you. Anyone appreciate being in the chat? Makes it less than a simple dialogue. What do you guys? Bromir says government has far too much power and it's scary. Yeah. talking to a couple libertarians here.
Preaching to the choir.
Yeah, I don't think you're gonna get any disapproval there. Yeah, watching this dude's face just get more and more eat shit and die when Candace shut him down made me hate Earth. Yeah, he's a real shithead, that Ted Lieu. I haven't really talked much about myself, but I for a minute was blue pilled back when I was having my bipolar episode. So I'll say it was the bipolar, it wasn't me. But the more I red pilled myself, also just from a mental health aspect, the more healthy I feel in general. I do think maybe this will be another show. I think that being blue pilled is bad for your mental health.
Oh, absolutely.
But that being said, I used to actually be like, oh, Ted Lieu, he looks like a really nice guy. That was like when he first came on the scene. He's a California. This is 2 years ago he's elected. I remember when he ran his first couple ads, I'm like, oh, he's a good looking, he's a nice looking guy. He's polished and everything. And then he started having policy. And Cass said, I would love to be able to regulate the content of speech. The First Amendment prevents me from doing so, and that's simply a function of the First Amendment. Ted Lieu. Good point, Cass. Yeah, that was definitely, he had already crossed the line for me before he said that, but yeah, it's he's a real shithead. Technologically illiterate boomers. What else is new? Yeah, Bro Mirrors, that's true. It's an interesting time to be alive with some of these people being slow influential over systems that they have no stake in or no part in. That, even a guy like Ted Lieu, he's older and he wants to censor. He's not even one of the worst, but they want to censor free speech on a platform that is meant for free discussion and dialogue. It's like, but dude, all you ever do is post one-way statuses trying to propaganda people. You're not one of the people in the trenches trying to engage in dialogue. Of course you want to censor the people in the dialogue. That's one of the issues I have with the people who are at the high-end levels of like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that. It's their content is normally one way. They're not looking for a dialogue. They're looking to tell you one thing, and then they're moving on to their life or looking to post the next thing. While like lower level content creators like me, you're more mid-tier, you engage with your audience, and you have to. He can afford to ignore his constituency to a point because he's delegating, and
yeah, he can just pretty much stand at a pulpit and people just have to listen.
But if that's exactly it. And you get that blue check mark like you're talking about before, and you get that first 100,000 followers, and you can say whatever you want now. It doesn't matter. Like,
yeah.
And you always get supporters too. That's one of the problems I've seen with high follower accounts is certain people think that that's a badge of authority of some sort.
Right. And they think it means anything when in the grand scheme of things, I mean, I know that's easy for me to say when I have 13K, but that's been in the last year. I went from 1,000 to 13K in a year and 3 months. So I feel like I'm
shout out to Gaines.
Yeah. I feel like shout out to being a girl, I guess.
That's true. Well, I forget who said it. Someone said I need to be showing more skin to get my follower count up. Bro Mirrors, he said, I need to show more skin. Maybe I'll do the next podcast topless. Huntakilla says limiting free speech, that's gonna be yikes for me, dog. Yeah, it's never I don't think there's any American who would be like, yeah, you know what, get rid of more of my freedom. It's what we were founded on. But yeah, I'm all for that. I remember hearing that quote and couldn't friggin' believe my ears. Yeah, in reference to the Ted Lieu quote about the First Amendment. Okay, quit sucking me in. Good night. Subscribe to Enigma. I used to think the thought police stuff my old boss used to say was just a joke, but seeing the UK, for example, it's not so crazy. Oof. Yeah, I'm staying quite abreast of a UK politics just because if you don't think it's a domino for us,
it is.
You're not paying attention.
It's coming.
Not only that, but like the YouTubers,
it's coming.
It's coming. Yeah, the YouTubers in UK though, if you notice, they have a sense of urgency much stronger than ours.
Oh yeah,
they're like
it's directly affecting them. People over here are like, haha, screw Europe, whatever. I'm like, hello, Interglobal politics, people.
Well, I'm gonna, like I said, recovering nerd. I'm gonna hit you with what I think of. It's like Rohan and Gondor. It's exactly like that. It really is. You know, they're like, where was Gondor when we needed our help? It's like we need. And the thing is, I do think there's a lot of people who are becoming friends across the pond over libertarian values. That, like, the UK has a different history, and obviously we have a bit of contention in our founding. little bit.
1776 shall commence again.
I think Brexit is uniting the, for lack of a better way, conservative sides of both into uniting. Like, I know Paul Joseph Watson is one of the guys, just a name drop. Sargon of Akkad. Those are two big name guys that they keep me abreast, at least, of what's going on over there. Because you look at the news and they think, oh yeah, diversity is everything. It's going to make everything great. But it's really shutting down a lot of what's making them very quickly. If you blink, you're not going to notice. Count Dankula too. Thank you, Cass. I forgot about Count Dankula. Bert Gumner.
The pug.
Yeah, I don't know about Bert Gummer. That's new for me. The beacons have been lit. Gondor calls for aid, and Ronan shall answer. That's it. United States. We are the preeminent memers in the world, so.
Well, now we're the only memers in the world because they can't meme.
Oh, that's true. I forgot. Article, 16 something? Article 13? I don't remember.
13?
Article 13, that's it. That's messed up.
It's so funny. It's not funny, but it is funny. Because we get made fun of all the time because we're dumb, fat Americans. So
yeah.
At least we can meme.
And the left can't meme anymore. Well, I heard something recently. I forget who it was. They said the left can't meme anymore. Do you know why?
They literally cannot.
Do you know why they can't meme, though? Because here's the punchline that is new to me because they are the meme.
Oh yeah.
You can't be the meme and make the meme. See, the right has the luxury, and here's the thing is, because the left has society now, they have their hands on the reins, is we are the outsiders now, being the right wing, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean, that we're the passive observers and we can laugh as the herd falls off the cliff. The moment we actually start, red pill again, that's when they can throw shots at us for having religious belief and whatever. It used to be back in the early 2000s, back when it wasn't popular to be conservative. I think that's the pendulum swinging again, at least socially.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, conservatives kind of are the counterculture now. The right is counterculture. So it's kind of hard to meme, like you said, when you have control of culture. It's just not funny to be like, haha, isn't this so cool? It's true. It's funny to make fun of the people that are spouting all these beliefs, and you're like, that's not true.
Cass just said, I'm a dumb fat American. I'm glad I have the liberty to be that way.
Yeah,
it's true.
Who has the quote? Ron Swanson, if I want to balloon up to 600 pounds on bacon and die of diabetes, I can, because I'm an American.
I was about to make that quote, but you beat me to the punch. That's exactly it. Which, ironically, he's not even libertarian. Nick Offerman he's a Hollywood elite. But he symbolizes one of the most iconic libertarians in Hollywood. Bromir said one thing a minute ago I didn't acknowledge. Peterson was on point when he said speech is just an extension of your thoughts. So any government that tries to curtail your speech effectively wants to control your thinking. He was on point when he said that. I remember I had chills the first time I heard that. Because that was back when he was still, that was pre-12 rules. He said that I don't remember what the law in Canada he was fighting was, but it was the compelled speech law. And that was exactly what he said, is the moment, because the way you speak and the way you write is an expression of the way you think. And if the government can control the way you speak and write, they effectively control the way you think. And that's so Orwellian. That's literally the point.
I should have worn my shirt.
I actually love your profile picture. Make Orwell great again.
I want to change it, but history. People keep asking me where it's from, and I get commission on sales.
Do you?
So, yeah, from the
distributor?
Company that sells it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't want to change it. The capitalist in me is like, I can't change it.
No, you're right, Bromir. It's C16.
It's my Avi now. I can't change it. It's
No.
just gonna be my permanent profile picture, I guess.
Hell no, and you got a good sassy looking pose. Yeah.
Yep.
It's a good symbol for all newcomers to your Twitter.
Yeah, I love when people clap, or they think it's a clapback, but really it doesn't make it any less true.
No.
I love when leftists come in and they say, well, Orwell was a socialist. I'm like, well, it says make it fiction. That doesn't change the shirt. It says make Orwell fiction. It doesn't matter if he was a socialist or not. Make that idea fiction.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, it still fits. So.
Well, and to me, there's honestly, I could ramble on with anyone for the true definitions versus what's used in modern speak, but one of the big things is he was a progressive. Orwell was a progressive. A lot of people back in the early days of America were progressives, and certain things that they talked about that, and these are people who voted Democrat, there's people who were left-leaning, they were a big fan of eugenics, something that's not talked about very often. They were big fans of getting rid of the deplorables, the people at the bottom. They've literally changed where they were going to try to kill the lower, just kill them off. And now they're like, let's bring more in so that we can get rid of the middle class. They've changed their playbook. But that's the Alex Jones and me talking, and I need to take a step back.
Yeah, well, the censorship in Europe is really concerning, and it's fun to sit back and say, well, we're in America, it's fine, but look at the Patriot Act. Are we fine?
Well,
I don't really think so.
No. Not only that, but people forget Snowden. I don't forget Snowden every day.
Yep.
Julian
Assange is still on the run just for verifying.
That's actually new too. As of last week, he got kicked out of the Ecuadorian embassy, right?
Yep, and actually, Cassandra Fairbanks she flew to London just impromptu overnight. She's one of the journalists who's been primarily kind of following Julian and reporting on it because not many people mainstream are.
Hell no.
She just flew to London and was doing all kinds of live streams talking to the police in London.
Really?
Like, well, what are you going to do with him? And yeah, it's been really intense. And I mean, obviously, we think that, once a government gets a hold of him, specifically the United States, he's done.
Well, yeah.
Just like
Snowden is a goddamn hero. That's right.
So, yeah, there's still people out there promoting, whatever they can in truth, but it's not just the European governments.
You can't bring up Snowden and Assange without bringing up Tommy Robinson.
Yes. Yep.
And
just for reporting on local news stories that were already printed.
Well, and the reason why is he was going after Muslim migrant grooming gangs for human trafficking. Which
like I said, they were already. A lot of the things that he talked about were already news stories.
Yeah.
It wasn't even him just making it up and trying to make a ruckus. They were already stories that were happening, but no mainstream outlets were
I think I saw a video of him saying something. He's like, I don't want to do this or something. He's like, all I'm doing is going deeper into what people already know. He's like, all I did was go there and confirm that the facts are, in fact, the facts. And I realized that I was the only person portraying the facts as facts.
Yep. And everybody else is just trying to distort it, and
they're just running. They're just running with a story.
Yep.
That once they get the police report, the journalist. I mean, Cernovich says it. He said journalists are becoming the most lazy people out there. They stay in their building and they retweet each other and they do opinion pieces. But do they ever go back out there and interview people and get hands on?
Yeah, his Cernovich's documentary Hoax is.
Oh, I recommend it to anyone.
It might be. I think it's like $5.99. I don't even know, but it is well worth. It's like hours and hours of footage interviewing all kinds of people. It's not what you think it's gonna be. It's really good.
Fun. It's also fun. It's like lighthearted. It's
not like a doom and gloom.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen some docs that really make you scared. Like I felt hopeful at the end. Not only that, but Stefan Molyneux's ending, talking about the allegory of the cave, was just perfect. It was just landed the plane perfectly. Here we go. We got people saying if Assange is captured by the U.S., he's going to get the Hillary treatment. Yeah. # Hillary body count. I try to keep that hashtag as long.
Hillary treatment.
Yeah, suicide by 3 bullets in the back of the head. Yeah. To anyone, there's the name of a guy who got he was one of the whistleblowers of the CIA moving drugs through Nicaragua. That he got he got 2 gunshots to the head by suicide. Tommy's life was ruined by the police and media for the crime of calling attention to an actual problem. UK is such a mess that a Bobby will climb in through your kitchen window for buttering a piece of toast with an unlicensed butter knife. Oh,
somebody saw my retweet today.
Yeah, saying, Lobo, I saw your video. You got a license for that, mate.
It's fun to joke about, but to some extent, you really do feel for the people there. People are getting put in jail for just misgendering people there. So,
Hunter Killer, are you talking about links in the chat? I don't think you can. I'll put it this way though. You can follow me on Twitter at Mike MIKE pause PAWZ, and Mackenzie is at, well, you can see it in the title, at Kenzie Puff. And I know both of us are pretty active on Twitter, so if there's any links you'd prefer to share, I don't think YouTube allows you to put it in the chat, but feel free to follow us and tweet at me. I assume you can tweet at Mack. Yeah?
Yeah, of course.
So you have to see the video. It's very short. Yeah, I'll watch that eventually. So, sorry, we were talking about UK. Gary Webb, that's the name of the guy. Thank you, Cass. That's what I was talking about. He's a hometown journalist from San Jose, and he was the one who blew the lid off of was it cocaine? No. Yeah, crack. Oh, the crack epidemic in Southern California. Do you not know about Gary Webb?
No.
Oh, I love sharing red pill stories with people. Actually, Jeremy Renner did a video about his. He did a film about his life. So it's actually Hollywood made a video about it already. I forget what it's called. Shoot, actually, I'm in the wrong window. I'll pull it up right here. But he was killed off by the CIA because he figured out he was trying to figure out where the drugs were coming from because there was a big problem. And
so he's one of the first people to blow the whistle that it's.
Yeah, he worked for Kill the Messenger is the name of the movie.
Oh, okay, that sounds familiar.
Yeah. He died in 2004 at 49, but he was just an investigative journalist. He actually worked for the Cleveland Plain Dealer, which is from my neck of the woods. But he was just a local. He was like not a nobody, but he was like a mid-level guy, who was just looking to look into more. My whole OBS setup messed up here. Hold on. But the guy was trying to just dig deeper, and what he found out is he was digging into a whole CIA cover-up of them making a deal with the Nicaraguan drug cartels that they were providing the drugs. The CIA were providing them weapons and paying them, and it was this like triangular trade of drugs for weapons. And then the money there's probably a shell game there. But the whole point is like this guy, he got into it. He actually went to Nicaragua and he met with the drug dealers. And drug dealers, they don't care about the CIA. They're like, yeah, man, we get a CIA agent, comes down, give him the drugs, he gives us weapons. And the thing is, he tried to, he did a media circuit and they all were prepared and shut him down. They started asking questions like, well, where'd you get that source? Well, it was a guy. I saw him. I took a charter plane. They're like, okay, so what's the guy's name? I don't know, but I shook hands with that. Okay, so he's not a reputable source. They just tore him apart. And then eventually he died broken, sad, and he got suicided.
Oh, that's horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too conspiratorial here. I mean, we all...
the whole point about him is he had 2 gunshot wounds to the head. That's really, I got too in deep into it, but
yeah, I used to, when I waitressed before, it was at a bar right on the highway. It's a main highway. I won't say which because I don't want to dox myself, but It's a main, let's say, just drug trafficking highway in the United States. And we would have a lot of bikers come through, which was fine. Bikers are surprisingly nice, and they tipped really well.
I believe that.
They're kind of rough on the outside, but they took care of waitresses, and they were super nice. And I had these two guys that would come in fairly regularly to my city, and they would always order a giant thing of tater tots and iced tea, which is hilarious because they're these really gruff bikers. But they would always take their jackets off and lay them on their bikes, and I could never figure out why. And then you make small talk like, "Oh, are you in town, like business or pleasure, or whatever?" Because they always came through. They weren't from my area, and they would always say business. And then one day, I was getting off work. They were Hell's Angels that would come through and do God knows what. I mean, we all know they're drug trafficking, all kinds of stuff. And they were coming through, and they would tell me stories of, who they dropped the drugs off to, and
right.
You kind of make friends with these guys. They become your regulars,
Well, yeah, they're your source of income.
And that's just what they do. And then one day,
Jesus Christ, sorry.
You think that, you always think those stories of like, oh, the FBI and the CIA, they're selling drugs to people, and they're trafficking them in the United States. You're like, yeah, okay, crazy. And then you hear stories like Gary Webb, and you talk to bikers like these guys, and you're like, okay.
Well, and the funny thing is, to get back to the beginning of our talk in the first place, is people being ships passing in the night. It's like, unless you have jobs like, I'm a server right now, I'll say it, you were a server at the time. Yep. If you don't have jobs like that where you interact with a high volume of people, you don't always get those stories. And the only narrative you get is what the media tells you, or, you know what I mean? Is that first person angle gets lost a lot of times. And I mean, I'll put it this way. I've met a lot of bikers, and the media depiction of bikers is completely false.
Yeah,
they're generally very nice people. They're scary looking. It's a complete caricature. Mm-hmm. In fact, if you're on their side, they can be some of the best allies. Like, my uncle was actually ran with bikers for a little while. I don't know to the extent, and I don't need to know. But the whole point I know is that the friends of his I had, they were like, it was back in the late 90s, and I was this little kid, and I was like scared of them, but they were the nicest people to me. And that was like one of the first moments as a kid where I'm just like, I can't believe everything people tell me, Yeah,
and you kind of grow up hearing about, growing up, so I've always been fairly adept at writing. And my grandma, till this day, she's like, you need to write a book. That's what grandmas do. They dote over you. They exaggerate your talents, whatever. And I always hated it. And so people growing up, a lot of people were like, you need to become a journalist. And then I got into college, and I realized like what journalism has, I don't want to say warped into, because I think in many ways it's always been this way. We just didn't know about it because we didn't have social media, and we just had to trust the big newspapers. But journalism just seems like a dying art, and it does seem, I know Cernovich touches on this a little bit on his Twitter, but a lot of these times when people say, oh, I have a source, it's not like the old days where you do like what Gary Webb did, and you go investigate.
You shake hands with someone.
You give somebody a handshake, you say, hi, I'm so-and-so, tell me your story. It's just, oh, we have a source, and then when you dig deep, you find out their source is not a source. It's just some guy that said something.
Or it's a plant. Like your source is someone who, he's a mafia low-level guy or whatever, and they sent that person there with a narrative because they want you to know. Not because an investigative journalist finds things that aren't meant to be found. What we're having now are the people, they're getting talking points from the people that are trying to hide what's really happening.
Right. Well, and I love when, my favorite is when CNN or somewhere will say, a source from inside the White House.
Oh, yeah.
But they never say who. I'm like, it could be the gardener. Like, who? Who are you?
You're still telling the truth, technically.
Is it an aide? Is it the gardener? Is it the Secret Service person? Who is it? But, they
Is it the president himself? Oh, no, we have his Twitter.
Right. They can just say a source, and that's what a lot of these, unfortunately, publications do, is they just say a source, They can say a source said so and so's a Nazi.
Well, and then they hide behind journalistic privilege.
Right.
And it's like, no, you're not sharing. You're not worried about doxing your source. You're worried about showing the validity of your source.
Well, and we know time and time again, there was an example. They claim they don't want to reveal their source because of journalistic integrity, but they're completely fine with doxing high schoolers.
Oh, yeah.
For memes, for literal memes.
By the way, good luck to Sandman in his trial. I hope that he can shut down the New York Times. Failing, lying, fake news, New York Times. Oh, is it? I forget who he's suing.
Failing New York Times.
Yeah. I think the New York Times and the Washington Post are who he's suing.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
Yep, those are the two big ones.
So shout out to Sandman. Hopefully his trial goes well. Not only that, hopefully Roger Stone does well.
Yeah, Roger Stone.
Because the 5th of November, right?
Yeah.
Go figure.
That's so weird. November. I saw that and immediately I thought, really? Did he get to pick his date?
I was wondering the same thing.
Because that's something he would do, but I just thought it was interesting. I'm like, they're just playing with us now. Like,
Bromier just said, modern journalists will lie about information that takes 15 seconds to Google and confirm. It's true, though. And the thing is it more reprehensible for the journalists to be doing that, or is it more reprehensible for the audience to be buying it?
Right, that we just eat it up.
Yeah. And the funny thing is I have a lot of people that think of me as a naysayer, that I'm like Chicken Little, the sky's always falling. I'm like, because you're eating crap, and I don't want you to eat shit for the rest of your life, you know? And so, I don't know. It's like, I guess you have to take like more of a humorous point of view, or else you do become that doom and gloom person.
Yeah, it's really easy to get blackpilled about a lot of this kind of stuff.
Blackpilled, that's another good terminology, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I tweet. I've learned not to tweet too many serious things in the morning because my followers are like, "Whoa, I didn't need that blackpill this early in the morning. Calm down." I'm like, "Okay, I'll schedule that tweet for later. Sorry, guys." Like, they don't want to wake up and be like, "Masculinity is dying in America." Like, okay, I'll tone it down.
Yeah. Oh, Cass is saying, Hunter Killer talking about Sandman for smirking with the face crime, literally Orwellian.
Yeah, I posted that. Actually, I was one of the people that posted like the screen cap of that excerpt from
1984
Orwell's book. Yeah, 1984, that said face crime. That is literally in.
I wonder how many kids read that anymore. I know that was a required reading when I was growing up.
I remember. We had a kind of because I went to private school, but we had a kind of symposium class where we learned classic Greek and classic literature in general.
See, I did that on my own.
Yeah, well, now I do that on my own. But yeah, we had to. It was required. We read Fahrenheit 451, 1984, and Brave New World.
Brave New World I haven't read.
Reading. Brave New World is very strange. It's really good.
I like strange though.
It like takes it to, it's more graphic, I want to say, in a way. Like when you read it in high school, you're like, whoa, what is this guy trying to say with this? Like 1984, I feel like was pretty straightforward, like Big Brother, the analogy and all that kind of stuff. But Brave New World, it was just something, now I understand as an adult, but when you're back in high school, you're like, why is this old teacher making me read this weird stuff? Like, what does this mean? What is this
when I read it in 1984, I think I was in middle school.
Yeah. I
didn't understand what was going on at all. I'm glad I did.
You're like, whatever.
Yeah. No, it's funny because I think back to a lot of the books I've read when I was a kid, and I didn't get the context until I became an adult and saw what they were talking about. And it's like, I vaguely remember what was talked about in the books, but then people make the reference. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember reading that.
Yeah, I love rereading things that I was forced to read when I was a kid. It's one of my favorite things now. And I mean, I always loved reading, but I hated to be forced to read something. I'm like, if I want to read it, I'll read it. Don't make me read it.
Right. Well, I failed the book test for The Great Gatsby 3 times in a row.
Oh God, I hated The Great Gatsby.
I just thought it was one of the most boring books of all time. And I remember the third time I took the book test, I had a very hard English teacher my junior year. And he asked me, he said, have you read the book? Have you actually read the book? You're not going to waste my time with another book test. Like, I was going back into class. I was a very good student, but just English I didn't give a shit about. And he was a very egoic, strong teacher. Yep. And I said, I will tell you this. I looked at every word of the book twice over. Whether I read it or not, that's up to you, and that's up to your book test. Because he was a very good teacher, and he's like, what was the motivations of so-and-so in this scene, and what were they considering? And if I was paying attention, yeah, I might have known. But God, I thought it was so just, I don't know.
Yeah.
I could rag on The Great Gatsby forever. What's he saying? Bromir says, it was probably replaced with some Marxist horseshit. I don't know what that's in reference to. I might be reading something out of context here. But, we were talking about a bunch of books. So, I don't know. I'm trying to think of other books from...
Animal Farm.
Never read Animal Farm.
Animal Farm is...
You know what's one I do need to go back and read is... All the Kids on the Island. Piggy.
Lord of the Flies.
Lord of the Flies. That's one that was required reading that I did not understand the point of it all. And ironically, it's what I was living at the time. I didn't realize that till after. I remember reading this book. I was like,
is brutal.
Yeah.
It's brutal.
But I think one of the interesting things is, this is one thing I'd like to bring up, is I think like our generation, obviously the generations after us, but we've been brought up on a lot of fiction, like just proportionally as far as like the amount of information taken in comparatively to like previous generations. We have a lot more fiction, which makes us probably more capable of abstract thought than our predecessors. That being said, is that a good thing? Because I grew up with a lot of good fiction, but I always kept it as fiction. I always made sure I was balancing it with a good bit of nonfiction. And what I wonder is if people aren't as cognizant of the information they're getting, like if you're only watching like Netflix shows and blah, 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 is your life actually becoming a fantasy now if everything you're consuming isn't... Because I have friends of mine, like I'll talk politics and they'll get upset. They're like, why are you talking about it? Because it's real.
Yeah.
Would you rather talk about Game of Thrones season whatever? I mean, we can. But, you know, so someone just got their free speech taken away, and I thought it'd be important to, you know, maybe at least pick your brain and see what you thought about it for like half a second. But apparently that was too long, you know?
Yeah, I think part of the problem, at least the way I see it, is education being geared toward what's kind of referred to as non-cognitive thinking, which makes no sense to me, and I think it's a BS term. But it's basically
doesn't even sound like real words.
I swear it is. I don't
thinking.
think it is. I think it's fake, and it's one of those things they made up. But it's basically the idea that kids should be focusing on organization and test taking and all this stuff, which is actually...
Does that come complete with the pantsuit?
Probably.
For being
ironically, that
a Maoist?
That kind of learning actually is geared a lot more towards girls, and they adapt well to that, but boys do not.
Yeah.
So that kind of gets back into the gendered stuff. But I think that has a lot to do with the lack of emphasis on critical thinking, combined with our generation growing up on so much fiction.
Right.
Makes it really hard to differentiate.
Well, all that fiction, all that abstract thought blurs the lines to the point where you don't think there are lines. And as someone who loves fiction, who loves abstract thought, I love the fact that I grew up on it because it gives me different points of view to look at the real world. So when you blur the line completely, like when you get that stereotypical feminist with the blue hair and whatever, it's like...
Jigglypuff.
You know? I'm like, are you even living in reality anymore to a point? I always make this joke. It's like, just because you can do something doesn't mean it's right. Just because you turned your hair blue doesn't mean I respect you for it. And the same token goes for me. If I grow a beard or if I cut my hair, if I do anything also, I don't expect you to instantly approve of me or anything like that. It's just something I did. And nothing bothers me more than people with these grotesque, when I say grotesque, I'm meaning it lightly, but when they have out of the ordinary visual, which in Chicago I see all the time, people when they look different, they're dressing different to call attention, they're peacocking, but it's not even positive. Sometimes it's like negative peacocking. And they look at me, and when I look at them completely unfazed, and they're like wondering like, why aren't you phased? I'm like, because I just don't care.
Right.
Like as a server, these people come in and they're like, hello, I'll be getting one, and I'm like, hold on, drink order. Like they're like used to just running everyone. And I see that. I can see it not only in the way they dress, but I can see that in the way they act with people. And they come on, they I'm a symbol of patriarchy. As soon as I saw them, I all right, so I just got to play up to that role. You know, that's the way I look at it. It's like, if they're going to escalate, I'm going to escalate better. That's my difference of being a libertarian. Is like once the die's been cast, I'm playing the game. It's Jumanji, baby. So, yeah. And that's the thing is like, if you're going to see me as an oppressor, I'm going to oppress the shit out of you until you know what I mean? And I'm going to do it properly.
As the bad guy, I might as well be the best bad guy I can be.
Oh, the Cernovich said that too. I'm going to play up to the role.
Uh-huh.
And
yeah, so a lot of the to go back to the point about fiction. And
I'm sorry, I was getting into.
You're fine. I totally, and like I've been a waitress, so, and I'm getting ready to go back to it actually, just part time. So I totally get it. You see all these kinds of people, and you learn how to read people a lot better too.
Big time.
So within like 5 seconds, you're like, I know the game that you're trying to play, and I'm not gonna play it. So don't be trying to be sassy to me or boss me around. I'm just gonna. There's
certain customers that come in as a server that they're like a wild horse. If you show fear, they'll buck you off.
It's like the my favorite kind of customer is the middle-aged man who like tries to tease you just to see like how far they can, like, to try to mess with you. And I'm like, I have a dad and a brother. Like, this is not.
This is not weird to me.
It just doesn't faze me at all. No. But it's funny to watch.
Right.
But the fiction and critical thinking thing, especially being a part of the cosplay community, if you ask like 9 out of 10 cosplayers, I bet would tell you that the reason that they cosplay is to, and I'm quoting this from a lot of people that I personally know, escape reality.
I believe it.
Which to me, I just like wigs and I think the costumes are cool. Like it's not because I'm escaping my own insecurities a lot of people use that for a healthy outlet, and that's awesome. But it's also created this kind of community which is predominantly leftist. So not only are they using it to escape reality, but they're keeping any sort of reality out as well. Yeah, it insulates you. The more you can project, the less light comes in. Right. Yeah. Exactly. That's interesting. Very firsthand, especially in that community. But it's not just artistic hobbies that are going through that either. Like you said, just in school and whatever, in everyday life, you can see people trying to blur the lines between reality and fiction. Well, and to me, like, that's what the idea of liberalism, classical liberalism is. It's an idea of blurring the lines, shuffling the hand, shuffling the cards to see what comes out. You don't always know what the best thing to do is. And I think that's a good thing to a point, but we're definitely at a point in society where we're doing it too often. Yeah. When people get dispossessed with the way things are working, they're like, well, might as well just go with anything. And that's where we're at. Yeah, or we're getting a whole lot of anything. What's that? They either, go with the flow and they do whatever they want, and that causes chaos, or they just give up altogether. And then we're seeing parts of society that just are counting themselves out. They're like, I don't think I can make it. You don't think I can make it. I'm just going to sit over here. And well, one thing that's killing our generation is debt. I have never lived in debt longer than 2 months in my entire life. Something about me since I was a kid, I've never understood the concept of spending money you don't have. It's just like literally. That's good. It's really good. I don't feel like it's. I don't want to live with that. I've always wanted to like live in equilibrium. I didn't get my first credit card until like 4 years ago.
just because I didn't trust myself for a while. I was like, I will spend, and the whole point of me bringing that up is I think there's a lot of people, not just even in our generation, the Gen X ahead of us, they're strapped with either house payments or car payments, or let's not even get into financial debt or financial school fees or what.
Tuition.
There's a term that I'm completely missing for
Tuition.
Tuition, but there's like a buzzword term for owing money for school. I got my point across.
Yeah.
But yeah, people are spending way too much money, and I think one of the biggest problems is a lot of people are. I've reeled in my debt a bit. I'm way too impulsive. Yeah, and the thing is, I get it. The thing is, I wasn't impulsive growing up. I'm becoming more impulsive. But I think that people do those impulses when they're young. They're like, I get that car, I get that house, and then they live with regret. And I think the middle ground is, it's like, if you already have the debt, it's not worth the regret. I'm not a poet, but it's like, if you're already investing in that car, that house, that education, whatever, it's like that hand's already been dealt. Now you have to either pay it off and get rid of it, liquidate it, or use it, utilize it. My thing is, I'm just not impulsive. I haven't invested or spent much. But on the same token, I need to invest. You know what I mean? It's finding this middle ground that I don't think a lot of people understand, that discipline.
Yeah, a lot of it is
people like always
discipline.
joke about maxing their credit cards. I'm like, that's no joke to me.
Yeah, you're like, what are you doing?
Never come close to maxing my credit cards.
Yeah, I'm someone, my brother and I were the first people in our family to go to college, to get a college degree. So, you grew up being told, yeah, that's just what you should do, is go to college, because my parents didn't go to college. They don't know. That's what they're being told is good. It makes sense to them. Get a degree, get a good job, whatever. But then you get into college and you're like, this isn't for me. I was a world religion major. Like, what am I going to do with that? Teach? Oh yeah, that'll get me out of debt fast. It just wasn't. And then I found out, oh my God, I hate school. I don't want to be in school the rest of my life teaching people. I'll just find something else creative, another outlet for me. And luckily I got out before, I went to 3 different colleges actually. I went to a big state school, and then found out that women are way more unhygienic than men in dorms. And
I knew. Yeah, I learned that as well in college.
Wow. I just used the bathroom in other buildings because it was that bad. I was there for half a semester, came back home, went to a community college, and then went to a private university where I got in even more debt. And then just finally my health was horrible. I was in the hospital for the first time, and they were like, do you think this could be anxiety? And I was like, maybe. Yeah. So I was like, this is done. I'm dropping out of school. I got serving jobs. It'll be paid off in a few years, thank goodness. But there's people.
I'm curious. Did you get a degree?
No.
I didn't. You're creeping me out because I did the same exact thing.
Yeah, I was an undecided major until I did
3 years of college and didn't finish.
Yeah, and people ask me, they're like, are you going to go back? I'm like, for what?
That's what I say. And the funny thing is, for me, is I used to be very embarrassed. I felt so much shame. I was like, oh my God, this was the one thing I had to go to college. And the one thing that's funny to me is I have friends of mine who might end up watching this podcast. I don't want to sound bad to them, but some of them have degrees that they are now in a field. You get your degree, you're in your field, that's the job you get. They have more financial freedom than I do, by a lot. But when it comes to life freedom, like, I just moved to Chicago. Why? Because I can. I don't have student debt. I don't own a house. I had a car. I got rid of my car. I've done everything I can to become liquid. And that's the thing, is like, when you get that college degree, you're kind of shackled to yourself. It's ironic that getting that degree shackles you to a certain lifestyle, and it doesn't have to. Obviously, like, if you can just go your own way and ignore the fact that you got that degree, but you invested that time, you invested that money. And in my story is actually painfully similar to yours. I did 3 years of college, and just at going into my 4th year, I was getting ready to do my major classes to finally get the bachelor's. I'm just like, why am I doing this? Why? I don't want to go into finance. I was looking to go in either accounting or finance. Like, I don't want to do either of those. They don't motivate me in the slightest.
Yeah, and I'm always somebody who, it's a blessing and a curse. I can do things out of a sense of duty, that's fine. But I can't do things if I'm not, at least there's a reason for it, or I'm not passionate about it. And for me, I
think purpose is the word I always comes down to.
Exactly.
It's like,
so,
I'll suffer if there's a purpose.
Exactly. So for me, I hated school from pretty much 4th grade on. It's not that I couldn't do it. I just hated it. I felt like I wasn't learning anything. I was always in detention, whatever. I hated school. And then I went to a private high school, and, I wasn't failing out. I passed high school. But then people told me, okay, go to more school. And I thought,
more?
No.
This isn't a solution to my problems.
I thought, I don't like this. And it was people that knew me growing up, knew that I always hated school. And they would say things like, well, you're smart, but you're smart. I'm like, that doesn't mean that I need to go to college. Like,
right. Actually,
different paths.
There's one thing. Actually, I have an anecdote to give you, but we've been neglecting the chat, and I do want to.
Oh yeah.
Keep. I like to keep the dialogue or the community going. So, where I'm from, people only get in debt for housing and vehicles. Tuition is free, and debit cards are much more common than credit. Yeah, I've had a debit card ever since I had a bank account. And the funny thing is I didn't see a purpose to getting a credit card because I had my debit. Is the money that was in my checking is what I paid things off with. And it wasn't until I actually started living out on my own car, own place, own insurance, own everything, that I had to get a credit card because sometimes I needed that float just in case I didn't do my finances properly. And Cass says, I was told to go to college, didn't care for it. Was an RTVF major. RTVF. I can't make out that acronym off the top of my mind. I'll punch anybody who tries to make me write a term paper again. RTVF. I don't know what that is. I picked the major that seems the most fun. RTVF. Does that sound? I don't know. I could Google it, but I'm not sure what Cass was up to. And then Bromir said, degrees outside of STEM, economics, and law are a complete waste of time. I don't know about that. I guess STEM includes a few of the things I was about to say. Yeah, that might be true to a point. I don't know. Can you think of any exceptions?
No. I mean, a lot of people do. I think one way to fix the college.
Oh, radio, TV, film is what.
Oh, okay.
RTVF. Okay.
Well, yeah, with something like that, if I don't know, it's like there's such a problem in our culture, in my opinion, with emphasizing degrees. My fiance's in IT, and both of his parents work for pretty large IT companies. One of them's retired now, but his dad was completely self-taught. But when the .com boom happened, his parents
self-taught in IT or a different field?
Yeah, IT.
Okay.
Yeah. So he was a database management person, and he completely self-taught, no problem getting a job, whatever. And now even if you're in IT, if you have all these certifications and stuff, they say, well, if you don't have a degree, then we don't know that you can do it. And that's just so BS to me. It just comes off as so disingenuous, especially with hands-on stuff like that, where you're always going to have to be learning, especially in something like IT.
Oh, yeah. My mother's in IT. She's actually, that's how she's done very well for herself in IT, because it's something where that it's actually a really good field in the sense that if you invest in it, it will give you security. It will pay off in the long run.
100%. There's always going to be technology.
Always going to be technology. And
more and more.
Yeah. And you can make a name for yourself more independently than, say, another job.
Yeah, you can do consulting and all that kind of stuff.
Big time.
So.
Yeah. No, that's huge. I mean, actually just having that, and then the time spent working that job is more security for not only the job you're working, but the next job. It's
right.
a good place to be.
You're always building. Yeah, I don't know. I like you said, like you kind of described, I was always kind of embarrassed that I didn't finish college, but then I kind of got into the libertarian movement and I met all these people who kind of had a similar experience where, you know, they just kind of did college because they were told that's what you need to do. And then I got introduced to something called Praxis.
I've heard of Praxis.
Basically, it's a program where you just go straight into internships and hands-on learning with businesses. And you kind of build your resume that way, and they actually place you in companies so you can actually get hands-on experience for your resume. And a lot of people that I know in the libertarian movement just went from like homeschooling straight into Praxis, and they ended up with just fine jobs. So I think it's good that I feel like more and more people are waking up, even people older than us who were kind of bought and sold the lie of everybody has to go to college. They're kind of realizing that it's just not feasible, and it just doesn't make any sense.
Well, yeah. And actually, just talking about like the fact that we both didn't finish our degrees is I wear it as a badge of honor now, given the fact that given the student debt, that's it, student debt crisis.
Yep. It's horrible.
Given the fact that people are struggling to find jobs for those degrees, and then simply the indoctrination factor.
Oof, yeah.
Huge. You know, a lot of colleges and universities are fine, but if you go some of the big ones, some of the coastal ones, it can be a real interesting place.
Honestly,
like I have DePaul really close to me.
Oh, DePaul is bad. I know that from working for Young Americans for Liberty. That was my job, to go rabble-rouse at these colleges. So, you know, you'll have people say, oh, it's just like big cities and stuff like that. But I live in the middle of the Midwest. It's there. And I've visited colleges, and I have friends who are like stationed in Iowa for Young Americans for Liberty. It's not just the coasts. It's an academic culture that's kind of cancerous to universities. And when you push back against it, like Young Americans for Liberty did, and you say, no, you don't get to have a parking space that's the free speech zone on campus. That's ridiculous. You're a public university. People have free speech here. When you push back, they shrink, and they're like, yep, got it. But the problem is enough people are brushing it off, or they just don't push back. And unfortunately, a lot of kids go through public school their whole life, and then they get thrown into a university that's pushing the same, you know, leftist ideologies. And it's no wonder people come out and they are not well adjusted, and they believe that they can believe everything CNN says, and have no objective. They can't think of things objectively.
It's not, like you're saying, it's not a cognitive thing. It's not a matter of them learning and rationalizing things. It's a matter of them being validated for their past experiences.
Exactly. And I mean, I could sit here and I could be angry and say, well, and you know, you kind of go through that phase. I don't know if you did, but I did, where I was thinking, I was sold this lie and I can't believe, but at some point you just got to say, listen, I got in the debt. I'm getting out of the debt. I'm going to cut my losses. And now I can talk to other people about it and help them make informed decisions. Yeah. So it's kind of a growing experience, but I think a lot of people who come out of university and they get degrees expecting jobs, they never go through that learning experience, and they just feel like they're owed something.
I think the worst case scenario is for things to work out for you if you've been fed that lie, because I can't say that I know anyone personally. Luckily, most of my friends and close people are doing well for themselves. They can't complain. But the problem is when you do get that job right out of college and everything works out just fine, and say 5 years into the job, you get fired. Right. Now what?
Exactly.
Now what? You know?
Yeah, and sadly, I would love to see even if colleges stay the way they are, I'd love to see more of an emphasis on internships. And I mean like paid internships, not, hey, work for us for free so you can get experience.
Right, yeah.
And I think that would help people a lot. That way,
I could use a free intern on this podcast. That would make my life a lot easier. I should put a Craigslist ad out.
Craigslist ad. Yeah, I mean, sadly, I think a lot of people, instead of learning from their experiences, they just double down. Yeah. And
that's when you get the people, that's where you get the real dangerous leftists, is when it becomes an identity. It's no longer an ideology, it's part of who they are. And I just think of some like weird like black magic ritual where like this evil is like coming one with them, like, and that's just who they are for the rest of their lives, you know. They wear that out on their sleeves, and that's when they wear their pink pussy hats. And
well, and those are also the people that tell you that, oh, you don't think what I do, then we can't be friends.
Oh, that's the worst.
Like
that's the worst.
They won't even speak to anyone at all that doesn't agree with the narrative that they've been fed, and that, you know, it's not just leftists that do that. Of course, people on the right.
Oh no, yeah, there's plenty of people on the right.
But
this is the pendulum is in the favor of the right now.
The universities, particularly, usually when people come out of those, they've been fed this leftist ideology, and it expands to every part of their life because, like you said, that's their identity now, and they can't. I mean, I feel for them, because if you've been fed that your whole life, and like you said, it works out for you, you get a job, and all of a sudden you lose your job, and you're like, great, I have all this debt that I haven't paid off yet, because let's be real, if you've gone through a university for that long and you got a job, you're probably still in debt 5 years later.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately.
Unless you did your finances right, which most people don't.
Right. Which a lot of, you know, if you're an 18-year-old signing up for all that, you're like, yeah, sure, sounds good.
Well, it goes back to that Jordan Peterson angle. It's like, even if you do everything right, if you don't have that common sense stuff, from having someone to teach you that stuff, it's not going to be there. You might do everything right, go to college, get that job, blah, 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 blah. But if you don't dot your I's and cross your T's, it doesn't mean shit.
Exactly.
Life will just keep moving on.
Yeah, and I mean, you can't blame a lot of these people our age and older that kind of went through all this, and like you said, it worked, and now they have this resentment, and they're all socialists and all this stuff. It's like, well, yeah, of course, when you feel like you're owed
selling
something,
a false product.
Right. If you feel like you are owed something as an individual, socialism is the ideology for you.
That's it.
Like, why would you not believe in that? It's so funny. All these, like, older conservatives seem to be scratching their heads like, I don't get it. And even some libertarians, they're like, I just don't get it. Why are young people all socialists? It's stupid. It doesn't make logical sense. I'm like, think about
because they're not appealing to logic, first off.
Right. It's not a logical thing. It's I went through all this and I feel I'm owed
Hold on.
this.
Cass has been talking to us for the last like 10 minutes and we haven't said anything.
Oh, no.
I don't want to sound bad. He said, I picked it. He's talking about radio, TV, and film. I picked it because I had no idea what to do with my life. I was 34 and I still know what to do. I'm a Lyft driver at the moment. Dude, preach. I'm a server in downtown Chicago. It's a grind, but I take my vacations whenever I want. I'm with it, man. That's the same thing. Is I'm only cutting out on my revenue if I take time off work. It's a different place to be. I'll put it that way. Where else can I take 3 weeks off over the course of 6 months to visit my family and friends back in Cali? That is cool. To the unemployment line and hope your school loans. Oh, there's a time difference here. To the unemployment line and hope your school loans can give you a break for a few months. I try not to be like that with people who have different politics, or a lot of my friends are left-leaning, but a lot of my friends are annoying about it. Yeah, that's what. I don't think it's an exclusively a left thing, but I think in general, people who are on the left subscribe to a lot of collectivist ideas, which gives you a propensity to be more annoying. Because you're not trying to have a dialogue with someone. You're trying to, like, spread a plague, really. Like, when you spread a plague...
Bring people into the cult.
That's it. When you're spreading a plague, there's no patience to it. It's all efficiency. I'm going to say a bunch of things, and then I'm going to get out. While the process of having a dialogue with someone is something you do for the experience. You rationalize it out. You learn something. You hope that there's something that person can give you and you can give to them. That's not part of what this whole contagion spreading is when it comes to collectivist thinking. Cass said, friends and now former friends. Yeah, I get that too. And the funny thing is some of the former friend people comes back around. There's actually one guy, I was a big Bernie fan, and he blocked me off Facebook because it was funny. He's just like, if you post one more thing about Bernie, I'm going to block you. So literally I posted something on his page like a minute later and he blocked me. And then like over the last couple months, we became friends again on Facebook. It's funny. I don't know. We're both like red pill people, I guess, whatever the hell that means. It's funny because we use these terminologies, but it's still like an amorphous term to me. It's like there's certain people I've heard to use red pill. I'm like, you're not using it right, first off.
Yeah.
But he is red pilled, and I know that I'm back on the right side, and there's no love lost. It's not like he made fun of me like, haha, you're back, or, I didn't make fun of him, haha, you blocked me, you little, I could say things, but it's not that at all. It's just like, okay, we're friends again. How much does that happen, to have such a severe ideological clash and just to be able to go back? Cheers to whoever I'm talking about. I don't want to dox him.
Yeah, it's funny. When you hear people say, I would always hear people say that we're like more involved in the libertarian movement than I was. You just don't understand. Like these leftist people, they'll just shut you off. And I just thought, no, that, like me being naive, that can't be true. That just seems kind of ridiculous. Even though I was not even registered to vote, totally politically apathetic at that point. And then I became an activist with Young Americans for Liberty and started traveling to colleges. And the first time that I had what I can only presume was a feminist, she unironically had blue hair. We were walking around at an engineering school, which is funny that would be so leftist. It's like, you're a woman in engineering. I don't understand.
Well,
anyway.
That's the thing is, she probably was there as a diversity placement. So
yeah, that's true. I hadn't thought of that.
Yep.
But we were walking around just doing a petition to change the speech codes on campus. And I explained to them what it was politely. I wasn't like, sign it or you're a communist or anything,
Right.
And she just looked me dead in the face. And it was the first time I've ever had anyone say it to me. She said, no, thanks, I'm a communist. And I just thought.
I have yet to have something that.
I just kind of stared at her
alarming.
Because I thought she was joking.
Yeah.
And then she gave me a nasty look. And I just looked at the person I was there with. I was like, okay, let's move on.
I have yet to have someone unironically say I'm a communist to me.
Yeah, it hasn't happened. Well, it has happened since, but online. That was the first time it ever happened in person. I'm like, oh my god, it's one in the wild.
Yeah, that's really what.
Like Steve Irwin, like.
Wild communist has appeared.
Like, okay, it's like, all right, I'll just move on. And I talked to the guy that I was with later about it. I'm like, I'm not crazy, right? That's what she said. And he's like, yeah, no, that's pretty common around here. And I'm like, what? I thought all these conservatives were crazy. Like, but they're not. Those people actually exist.
Yeah. So. Well, like I said, that's part of why I came here to Chicago, is I wanted to see if things are as if they're as PC as and they are. That I don't know. That's one thing about traveling and seeing new places and interacting with new people. It's like you don't want to take things on face value. And now I have firsthand experience, and now I can say it's worse than CNN says.
Yeah, well, it's like I said with universities, I was one of those people who's like, I mean, you guys are exaggerating. It can't be that bad. Right. And then I was one of the people on the ground traveling in my own car to universities talking to students. And one of the questions I would ask people to get them sign up is I would ask them like the parts of what the First Amendment was.
Oh, God.
And it was probably 50-50. I'm not going to lie. But it's okay. I had my pocket constitutions ready to hand out to them. So I was like, here you go. Read this for the love of God. But
let's get back to the chat real quick because we're behind again, which is a good sign. It's a good sign.
Yeah, I'm glad people are interacting.
Yeah. Cass says, one of my friends is a socialist, but he doesn't think he's owed anything. He just wants people taken care of. I understand what he wants, but socialism is going to ruin everything. Cass, I'm right there with you. Actually, one of my good friends, he had accused me of not being compassionate enough anymore. Because we saw eye to eye 2 years ago, like I said, when I was still blue-pilled. What the hell that means? I used to canvass for Bernie for a little while, actually. I'm sorry. Well, it just goes to show how far I've come.
Yeah. I mean, I was a centrist who wasn't even registered to vote. So.
I'll be honest, I did it more for socialization. I wanted friends and validation. I wasn't doing it because I felt morally right, or in fact, I don't want to talk about that much. It happened. So
it happened. We're over it.
Yeah, we're over it. So your friend wants to build a road to hell on your good intentions. That's exactly it. Yeah. It's actually, bro, Miraz, you hit that right on the point. Is because Cass has things figured out, your friend is like, okay, well, let's figure things out for everyone. the irony of that is that no one figures anything out because you're putting all the weight on one person in this scenario. Cass, he's a bleeding heart Bernie bro. Been there. But at least he has the decency to not be annoying. And despite being a leftist in San Francisco, he absolutely believes in the Second Amendment. That's interesting. In San Francisco. Because I've dealt with my San Francisco woes already, especially just being a Cleveland fan. Hating the Bay Area. But speaking of signing petitions, I once signed a petition against the death penalty with the name William Murderface. I signed his other petitions with my real name because I agreed with them, though. Yeah, just I think there's some people out there that they're like pseudo leftists, where I think that they're rational people, but they don't think that the right. First off, maybe there's probably a few demographics of that as well, but I would say some people who don't think the right wing is politically viable enough. I think I've had conversations with people who they agree with me on policies and ideas, but they're like, at the end of the day, I still can't. You talked about Alex Jones, or they'll go back to something that it's like, I just can't get with you on that. I'm like, that's fine. Just keep working it out. The thing is, I like know that time is on my side, because like I've looked into things. And that's why I don't mind having some of my more conspiratorial or controversial stances, because it's like it's not even me. It's like all I did was read something, and I'm telling you to go read it yourself. Whether you do or not is up to you, you know. Right. And the thing is, if you read it and you get something else out of it, and you tell me I'm wrong, like I said, that goes back to my pinned tweet. Tell me why I'm wrong. I hate being right. That sounds arrogant, but I prefer someone to be like, hey man, that's not how you do it. Here's a better way.
Well, I think a big problem, especially with right versus left politics, is a lot of
Bromirez. Hey, take it easy. He just said he's about to head out. It's been nice having you in the chat. Sorry.
You're okay. A lot of people have kind of been fed this lie that if you aren't left-wing, you're not compassionate, or you don't understand where other people are coming from. And there's a lot of history with that.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of science behind it, of course. But it's kind of a weird phenomenon that I've experienced recently as well, kind of getting more involved in the red pill community. And I'm very new to even researching any of this. I just started reading a bunch of books, and
sure, yeah.
It just happens to align with some of my views on masculinity and femininity and stuff like that. But it's almost like the immediate response is to say, well, if you disagree with me, then you just must lack some emotional something. I can't even qualify what that would be.
Well, my friend accused me of being less compassionate since I've been red-pilled.
Yeah, I've been accused of having zero empathy for other human beings in the past few months. And I'm like, all I'm doing is tweeting that I care what happens to men.
Oh, and
like, well, I have people message me thanking me, like, I'm glad you're talking about this. So I think
the men's rights. I think the men's rights issue is much more deeper rooted than the political. I think the political is something that's more cyclical. I think that's something that is played with through politicians. But I think that's why I wanted to talk to you. Actually, we should get back to that if you still want to go deeper into it. We should go deeper into gender, because I think that is one thing that it worries me, because it doesn't look like there's a fix. I don't see gains coming out of this. I think it's only getting worse at the moment. And I've talked to well, actually no. The next generation seems oddly conservative. Yeah. And that's the hope I have. But from the people who have the means to change things, I don't have much hope. The people who are currently sitting on resources and influence, I don't see them trying to do every once in a while you get some celebrity or something say, but I mean, I can't think of the last time someone's outright said, you know, men can use a voice as well. Have you seen the movie Red Pill? The Red Pill? Okay. Because to me, I watched that a couple months ago, and that was huge to me, because I she was trying to do a gotcha piece on MRAs initially, right?
It was basically supposed to be a hit piece on the entire men's rights and red pill whatever movement.
Right.
And the more she got into it and actually started talking to people with different ideas, oh my goodness.
Well, to me, that's what the concept of red pilling is. It's simply taking a perspective that is not your own and understanding it to the point where it's broadened your horizons, where you can think of other, you can have, actually, it's ironically empathetic,
Right. It is the wanting to speak and understand people's ideas that I've read the Communist Manifesto.
I haven't.
You should read it. It's very short.
Oh, is it? Oh, go figure.
Yeah, it's not very long. It's more like a novelette than like a full-on book. But the more you to even have the inclination to speak to people that say things that kind of, for lack of a better term, piss you off. Right. It's a unique skill, and it's an ability to empathize with other people. So I find it kind of strange that when you do that, the immediate response is to say, well, you must lack empathy or compassion if you're, even speaking to conservatives or whatever. I recently picked up a red pill book, and I had someone reach out on Twitter and specifically ask me about a portion of it, asking me, well, aren't you annoyed by this perspective as a woman? And I was like, well, I always read books twice. I try to read it the first time and just digest it, just get through it, and then read it a second time and actually kind of mull it over and go through it slower. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, no, it's just a different perspective. I'm not going to be angry at someone for ideas, and they cite sources, and what am I supposed to do?
I've read books I didn't like. I've watched movies I didn't like. I've watched TV shows that the first show I'm just like, I'm not even going to watch the second one. It's like, just because you watch something doesn't mean that, contagion detected, brain shutting off.
Right. It's like, I've always hated, I understand why people do it, but I really hate when people have, I think this is why I'm hesitant to write for different online publications, because I hate when people have the views expressed here and the retweets are not endorsements of my employer or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
I hate that. I hate the idea of being beholden to this idea that I have to clarify that just because I retweet this person or am reading this book or have mentioned this person's name doesn't mean that I absolutely endorse everything.
Well, hey, technically you can say whatever the hell you want on my podcast, and technically I'm the one taking the blame. So
here's my chance.
This is your chance to get wild, and I can't think of one thing you could say that would really make me like, you know what, you're never coming on again.
Well, I mean, you've seen my Twitter, so you pretty much knew what you were getting.
I have a bit of a luxury that I've already vetted you more than you've had a chance to vet me, but
exactly. Yeah, I've just always found that extremely frustrating, and I think that's probably what lent me to libertarianism faster than leftism or conservatism, is because it just seemed like, in general, people were more willing to just listen. And I know we make jokes like, oh, you statist, and oh, you're just a bootlicker, and all this BS. But at the end of the day, people who are libertarian or libertarian leaning on other side, you have people like Dave Rubin and people like that, they're way more willing to just listen. I saw Dave Rubin, a Jew, defend Candace Owens when the entire media was saying that she was defending Hitler today. And Dave was like, listen, I watched the clip. What are you people talking about? Now, if anyone's going to jump and be offended by that, you would think it would be someone who's Jewish. But Dave was like, this is absurd. Watch the whole clip. Come on, people. Like, what are you doing?
See, I'm so paranoid conspiracy theorist mentality where I'm just like, well, Dave's just doing that to ride the wave. See, this is the way I think. I'm like, someone's gonna get that attention, and Dave's like, gay Jew doesn't matter, I'm gonna jump in and take that spotlight. I'd like to think that he's doing it for his moral
virtuous
reasons. But I like can't turn off that conspiracy theory brain of mine that it's like he could be doing this just for the likes.
Well, and I mean, I can't blame you for that.
It's like a pilot light. It's like a pilot light of skepticism that I always keep burning.
Well, I mean, it's healthy to be it's healthy to be skeptical about most people.
Dave Rubin's one of those guys that I'm very skeptical of.
I made some people mad because I said, if I haven't shaken your hand, I don't trust you. And it was supposed to be a point about listen, anybody can say anything they want to you online. You should always have a healthy skepticism.
Yeah.
You know, I could have said anything in my
If someone's
tweets.
trying to give you something for free online,
right.
It's never free.
Well, I could have, you know, tweeted all this stuff and come on the podcast and spouted some really weird, disgusting stuff. But, you know, because it's online, you don't know. I could literally just be selling out. So that was my point with that tweet. But a bunch of people were like, hey, I've met you, but I didn't shake your hand. Do you not trust me? I'm like, I've met you in person. That's the point.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So
well, they take it too literally. That's the issue.
Right. I'm like, come on, people. Just a little read into it a little bit. Come on. Like.
Yeah. Give me a little give take here. Just.
It's like,
I'm trying to make a point. I'm not trying to tell you exactly how to live your life.
Oh, God. Yeah, I should make that my Twitter bio.
What's that? Oh.
I'm just trying to make a point. I'm not telling you how to live your life. Story of my entire Twitter.
Well, actually, I've been messing with my Twitter bio for a long time. For a minute, I had it as a way I was trying to get people to go to my YouTube channel. And I was like, you know what? I'll just have my YouTube channel as like a link. But I realized I'm just going to have a couple quick quips. Couple quick quotes that summarize who I am, because that's the best way. Because for a while I had a whole bunch of like identitarian. I was like libertarian from Cleveland, living in Chicago, you know, born here. I was just like, that's just lame. This is Twitter. This is a place for ideas. I'd rather like have like my ideas out there that people are like, oh, that's what he thinks.
Yeah, and that's why I had my Twitter bio was like that at first too, but I've kind of moved to just generic terms. Like I just like Mises.
I did want to ask you about Mises because I did a quick cursory search of Mises.
Yeah.
What about his work? It was his, right? Mises? As a gentleman? Okay. What about his work in particular warranted space on your bio? Because I'm not well versed at all.
Yeah. Well,
aside from your
people
quote.
give me a little trouble because I'm an anarcho-capitalist. So usually, those people associate with Murray Rothbard better than Mises, because Mises actually wasn't.
I didn't know about
most
Mises.
People think he wasn't an anarcho-capitalist. So they're
Mises.
like, oh well, he wasn't even what you are. So why is he in your profile? Well, it's because I attended Mises Institute is in Auburn, Alabama. Mm-hmm. And I attended Mises University last summer, and it was like, my brain just exploded. It was like,
That's awesome.
It was Austrian economics. So economics is one of those things I'm constantly reading and trying to study, and, you know, math has not always been my strong suit. So I'm always trying to learn more about that, because I was heavily invested in social issues when I first got into politics, and now I'm kind of shifting more towards cultural stuff and economics. But they talked about, basically Mises' most famous work is Human Action. And the Austrians, especially Mises, take a different approach to how most people and economists and politicians, honestly, take about human behavior. And Mises basically has this phrase, which I may put in my bio, I'm not sure, I'm fond of my Fox Mulder quote. But Mises says human action is purposeful behavior. So we talked about earlier how, for me personally, it's really hard to do things if I don't see a purpose behind it. And Mises' basically general philosophy was there's a purpose. People just don't, they're not isolated actors. People just don't act just to do it. Mm-hmm. There's always purpose behind what people do. So Austrian economics and human action is a very large book. I had to use a study guide. Like, there is a literal study guide to read the book. Because Mises is one of those people who's not really for people who are just, oh, this looks like a fun read. Right. You know, you really do have to kind of work your way into his work. But the purposeful
read behavior, and reread kind of.
Exactly. And you'll get something more out of it every time you read it, and then go through it with the study guide, and it makes sense.
Kaz just said, I got a friend of mine who is also an Asuka cosplayer who is into Mises. Oh, yeah. The parallels between you two is astounding.
Oh, well, link me up, because I'm kind of on an island.
Yeah, you hear that, Cass?
Especially if they're a female.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't know who Asuka is, but
She's from an anime. She's the character that I enjoy cosplaying to the point where people on Twitter are like, can you not post that? We've seen it 50 times.
I'm a casual normie anime watcher. I have a couple animes I watch, but that's about it.
And the anime that she's from is from the 90s, so it's an old. Yeah, so you wouldn't. I don't even remember how I stumbled across it. It was one of the first anime I watched. I think it was probably recommended by someone that's way more into it than I am.
But yeah, make sure you hook a sister up and.
Yeah. Tweet at me or I'll look through my notifications and make sure I get it.
Her Twitter, her Twitter's in title, so.
Yeah, that's really cool. But yeah. So Mises' work. When I first heard the quote, "human actions, purposeful behavior," I don't know, something just clicked. And then the more of Rothbard and Mises that I read, Rothbard has this is a big change for me in my journey into libertarianism. I'm kind of getting away from Mises now, but I read one of Rothbard's books last summer called Egalitarianism as a Revolt Against Human Nature, and other essays.
That sounds interesting to say the least.
It was another light bulb moment for me, to be completely honest.
Being civilized as a way of going against our animalistic nature. Because I know what egalitarian means, but the problem is I'm always trying to be able to red pill the most simple person, and I can't use the word egalitarian.
Yeah, because most people associate, unfortunately, and this is why it was kind of a light bulb moment for me. A lot of people, if you say, I'm not for egalitarianism, they're like, what?
I think everyone is for egalitarianism. It's like, what brand of egalitarianism are you trying to push?
Right, and basically, the book's just deconstructing this idea of what modern egalitarianism is, which is equality at all costs in all things, which is, of course, I come from a religious background, so it's just not possible because humans are flawed. So, you can try, but it's been tried. So
it's been discussed, and it's already been discussed in the podcast.
Yeah, I've found that Mises and Rothbard and a lot of Austrian economists just take a more, in my opinion, practical approach to human nature.
Right.
Like everything else that I've ever read about economics or political theory, it just feels like it just doesn't make sense in the context of how humans behave. And Mises and Rothbard were the first people I read where what they said made sense to me, even coming from like a Christian background.
Right.
As far as how humans work, how those things would make sense, how economics would make sense and actually work with how humans have a purpose behind things.
Right.
Instead of just a bunch of numbers and theories.
That's a lot of insight for most, I gotta say, most of the reading I've had on economics and economists is behind me. It hasn't been an interest of mine recently, which you're making me feel a bit vulnerable on. But I'll be honest. But that's I'm
still learning. I read the egalitarianism thing last summer.
Well, no, to me it's division of labor. You keep reading up on economics and keep coming on the podcast, and I won't have to, right? If you do it well enough.
just have me on once a month, and I'll just.
We'll do the economist update. But I'm looking at other stuff too, so that's the whole point. We can't all read the same books.
Right.
Cass said he PM'd the link to the Mack and Liberty page.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
You should have that somewhere.
When we're off here.
Cool. But I was just going to say, that quote actually struck a nerve with me too, because a lot of the economists that I had read or read on were a bit dry, not only in the way that they write, but also the way that they thought. And that's a very humanistic view from an economist. It was human action is what was the verb? It was defined.
Is purpose.
It just is purposeful intention.
Behavior.
I'm sorry. I'm paraphrasing. But that
Yeah.
that's interesting, because if that's the principle you're looking at, if that's the lens you're looking at the economy through, it changes a lot of things. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree, and that's what I mean. I'm not gonna lie, Mises is not the easiest person to read. He still writes like an
No.
economist, make no mistake.
Because
but
the problem I see with a
ideas-
lot of economists is they're all just like reaction. Like it's all like a circuit board. But to look at it as it's like people only do things when they feel a purpose, that's much more humanistic. That it's there's a human element to that. That we're still a part of a circuit. We're still a part of a system. I don't think that that's going to be denied, but
Right.
it's more holistic, maybe. Is that kind
I'm
of?
not sure it just seems like a more realistic approach to me to just
Right.
how the world works. The world isn't static with a bunch of you just pin numbers on a board and you're like, hey, this makes sense. To me, one of the reasons why I've always had trouble with math is because I always thought of it as numbers, equations, that's it. But I had a friend who was a philosophy major in college, and he's like, no, you should have taken a philosophy class first. And I was like, what? And he's like, it's logic. And I'm like,
Yes.
oh God, here we go. He's getting on his pedestal here. But it's kind of like that. And that's kind of the click that I had with Mises is it can be dry to read, but the ideas behind it make to me a lot more sense. And obviously
yeah.
other people too.
Well, that's why.
How he approaches
That's why it's so
things.
well read. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's one of the nice things about dry reading and things like that is those are fields where a popularity contest actually does matter, because people aren't going to read and reread a dry book if it doesn't have some content in it. It's like
Right.
sometimes I'll go on like YouTube and I'll like click on a music video that has like 100,000 views and I'm like, why is that 100,000?
Why is this popular?
Yeah, can we just shift this attention to like anything else? Classical poetry, like I don't know. Actually, I have a poem I like to share with people. I don't know if it's even worth sharing at this point, but you shared with me your Mises quote. Have you ever heard of the poem "If" by Rudyard Kipling?
No.
It's actually, it kind of fits with the gender roles we were talking about, because I'm gonna read it to you.
Okay.
It's pretty short. I always love reading it, and it's been a minute. I try to read it at least once a month just to give myself perspective. And I'm actually pulling it up on the screen for anyone who wants to read. But I'm going to read it aloud. It goes, if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired of waiting, or in being lied about not deal in lies, or in being hated, don't give way to hating. And yet, don't look too good, nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave life to broken and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools, if you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start it again at your beginnings and never breathe a word about your loss, if you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there's nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose your common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill your unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And which is more, you'll be a man, my son. After talking about masculinity for a minute, that to me, it's like I've read a whole bunch of poetry. That's my favorite poem all time. And the funny thing is, I feel most of the people I've read it to haven't heard it or heard of it. And I'm like, this is Rudyard Kipling. He wrote a fantasy from like back in the 30s. It's a very old poem. And I think it's like it's nothing if more. It's like transcendent. It's something that could always be applied. Yeah, he died in 1936. He was born in 1865. So this is like a 100-year-old poem.
Wow.
And I think it's like one of the best things out there. I don't know.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
It's actually the header on my Twitter. That's why I brought it up.
Okay.
You shared yours, I shared mine. The thing is, for me, it's only the first line. But that's it.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think it says a lot, especially masculinity-wise, about the idea of like self-sacrifice and being able to sacrifice things that you care about, or whether intentionally or not, and be able to just pick it up and keep on going. Which I think a lot is kind of an anecdote about. You always hear that stereotypical pull yourself up by your bootstraps thing, and people make fun of Americans for it. But I think
that's it.
Maybe if we could get back to the spirit of what that actually means and not just shout it at people and leftists when we disagree with them, that maybe we'll fix things to some extent, or start to.
And the thing is, there is a right way to pass truth on to people. It's like I've talked to religious people, and I've had my own battles with religion in the past, but I'd say I've come to terms with religion again. But one of the biggest issues I have is some people like to browbeat religion. They're like, because it's the truth, I can provide it however way I want. And I'm like, no. Sometimes there's a nuance to it. You need to provide it in an aesthetic, beautiful manner for people, especially if they have a negative connotation to begin with. And just like any truth, people are like, well, because it's a truth, it'll eventually find its way. No, some people go their whole lives without, looking into things deeper. That's why you need to, it's your job as someone who knows what you find to be true to provide it in a way that is digestible, Yep.
And that's why I'm not shutting up on Twitter.
That's it. That's really what it comes down to.
That's the ultimate goal, is if I can just make people look into things. You don't even need to agree with me. Just look into it.
Cass says, American exceptionalism. That's why we're so bent on pulling up by the bootstraps.
Well, I used to be one of those people that was like, you first get into libertarianism, it's kind of a black pill about America and how maybe things aren't as great as we've been told that they are as kids. But, then you grow up and you see Article 13 pass in Europe, and there are still concrete American values that I think are really important and those sadly becoming unique in the Western world, to be quite honest.
Well, and those are reasons to get up and to have pride in your nation. Yep. The whole thing we were talking about Candace Owens, the whole point was she was defending nationalism as a concept. And because that was a hate speech tribunal, wasn't it? And
it was for Facebook banning stuff, yep.
It was pretty much the word nationalism being, the way I look at it is the word nationalism was put on trial today.
Yep.
And I've been saying for a long time, we need more nationalism, if anything. And the ironic thing is, technically, I'm a first-generation immigrant. I don't know if I told you this. I was born in Maracaibo, Venezuela. My mother is born in Colombia. My father moved down there. Bada bing, bada boom, here we are. Technically, I am an immigrant. Most of my family is immigrants, too. But as you can see, I've assimilated quite well. To the point where sometimes I have discussions with my grandfather, and he's a little disappointed with culturally how much of an American I am. But so be it. You had your shot.
It happened.
The American side won. American exceptionalism yet again. But that's the thing is, I think that there's a lot of immigrants that they do embody the American spirit, and it's like, what is the American spirit? Can you define it? You don't need to. It's, if everything's working fine, you don't need to at all. If everyone's just doing their part for themselves, it's more simple than that. The problem is we're having people slowing down the machine that is the United States, saying, but my free stuff, And if you're living the American dream, you don't have time to say that.
No, you don't. Which is, I think that's kind of where the frustration with older generations is, with our generation and the one right before us, is, you see these memes about boomers all the time, like, oh, they're just like, why don't you just work 3 jobs like I did, and blah, blah, blah. But it's always been really hard for me, especially, I grew up as someone, my dad worked 3 jobs, my mom ran a daycare. It's been hard for me to identify with the just give me free stuff, even though I did go through school and I went to college and was conditioned a little bit, because at the end of the day, it's like, just do it.
Right.
It just sounds dumb, but I mean, I'm sure you identify with this.
Or just do something.
Just try.
Yeah.
Because the problem is, I totally get not everyone can just pull themselves up by their bootstraps. There are some people who, because of situations, they can't do it.
Well, I was afraid to start this podcast initially. It took me getting up the courage to, because I don't know, there's a bit of vulnerability to this, and I was like, I don't know, what if this, what if that? It wasn't until I was just like, just go with it. Yep. Where, and I'd actually like to make this a full-time job one day eventually, if the universe bestows its blessings upon me. But I'm going to do everything. That's the thing, though, is like, if you take a socialist stance, it's like, well, it'll be provided to me. That's not the way I look at it. It's like, it'll be provided to me if I give myself every opportunity throughout the day, Like, I still need to make sure I'm reading up on things. I still need to make sure I can't slow down, just be like, I've earned this, that it's just going to come my way, which that line of thinking doesn't make any sense. This entitlement, this privilege. And I think that's the issue that a lot of boomers have with us, is they think that we think we're entitled to certain things. And the funny thing is, technologically, certain things we are entitled to now. Like, yeah. If I went over someone my age's house and they don't have Wi-Fi, I'd be like, what the fuck's wrong with you? Like, it's not like I'll still survive. And this is where the boomer memes will come up and be like, I didn't have Wi-Fi for my nephews and nieces and blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, yeah, you're funny, but on the real, why do you not have Wi-Fi? Are you not reading? Are you not staying up to date? Like, because to me, this is the joke where to their generation, it's a luxury. To ours, it's a commodity. Mm-hmm. That's really, when you want to break it down economically, that's what it comes down to, is they see things that are household to us as luxuries. And that's where the real cultural difference is. And I don't know if that will ever really get fixed, They're probably going to go to their graves, most of them, thinking we're entitled brats for having our Uber Eats. And like that's the thing, is I'm still coming to terms with all the luxuries of Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I've had people ask me why I go and get my own groceries. Because they deliver them.
Yep. Yeah, so at one point, the area that I'm from didn't have Uber yet, because our government was stupid and was like, people will die. I'm like, what?
From Uber drivers or automated Uber drivers?
Just regular Uber drivers. They're like, the taxis, though. And I'm like, the taxis can compete.
Right.
But, that's just the libertarian in me. But
right.
I went to Chicago for some conference, and we were Ubering around. I'm like, oh, my God, I can get anywhere I want for, like, $5.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
And if you Uber pool, you can do it for, like, $2.50.
Even cheaper. Yeah. Yeah, it's really amazing. And to get back to the point about trying, starting.
American exceptionalism. That's really what it comes down to, is believing that if you, to really get back to your quote, it's having purpose for your action.
Yep.
It's a lot of countries, people don't have the opportunities we have. And that's where the socialism things comes into play, is if you're not taking the opportunity of the blessings you have in this country, might as well get out. That's like the joke people, if you don't like it, you can get out. It's like,
just leave.
That's it. That's true, though. Like, all these communists, like these real communists, like, America's evil. Well, go. There's the door.
Well, it's like all these socialists.
Go try starting a commune in Nigeria. See what'll happen.
It's like people tell libertarians, well, why don't you just move to Somalia? It's
right.
Like, but to speak to the point of just trying, a lot of things that I tweet now were things that would have just sat in my drafts on my Twitter, and I would have been scared to tweet them. Probably.
Oh, I've got a list. I started a list of drafts. My thing is, I don't know what's the best time to tweet them a day, so I just don't tweet them. and then they lose the context.
The moment passes.
Yeah, the moment passes, and I never post them.
I mean, a lot of the content that I post now, I honestly believed, but I wouldn't have wanted to tweet them because I would have been scared of the reactions that people get. Except then I started to tweet them and I got positive reactions and people think like I do about the issues. And then it just kind of grew from there. So you don't know until you try. That sounds like something my dad said to me. But it's true.
Yeah. No, it's well, and it's good to get that feedback because I don't know. In my red pill experience, I felt a lot of anxiety for some of the thoughts I was having. I was like, oh, are they coming for me next? Am I gonna get swatted? There's times where I was that paranoid. I'm like, I'm looking into Gary Webb. I'm like, am I gonna get suicided? Like, you are a reflection of what you're learning. And when I was getting into conspiracy theories for a while, I was like, am I next? And then, like, the thing you realize is the more you talk about it with people, the more safe it is to talk about. Not in reality, in your own head. It's like bringing up.
You realize people think like you do.
Well, even if they don't, like, if you're truly bringing up something, I'm going from the principle of, let's say it truly is very controversial. You have this thought that most people haven't heard of, and it is really controversial. If you tell it to that person, now they know it too, and they can dig into it too. You've literally like shared the load. Mm-hmm. And then that concept itself is only in your own head. You weren't carrying a load in the first place, is the point I'm trying to make here, is that we build up these things, of these burdens that we have. It's only by like having a network of people. I think that's why Twitter's so great. It's like if you hate Twitter, you're doing it wrong. There's always someone out there.
Well, and here's the thing. People say, we talked about call-out culture earlier.
Oh, yeah.
Of course there's that. But it's like what I said about internet friends. You can't, at the end of the day, Twitter is a fantastic way to connect with people. It is what you make it, and you can take it in whatever way you want. If you want to get on Twitter when you're angry and just complain to other people.
You tweeted about that the other day.
And be negative, you can do that. But ultimately, it'll destroy you, and a lot of people will be watching it happen. So if you're a person that needs to take a step back, it's easy to say. You
are a reflection of what you tweet.
Right. So, I mean, there's times I'll get on, I'll type a draft, and I'll think, no, I need to. My mom has this phrase that she always says with emails or phone calls or whatever. And she says, if you're angry about something, think about it for 24 hours.
Yeah.
And it sounds stupid, but the more you think about it, the more it makes sense. There's a lot of times I'll write something up, I'll put it in my drafts, and I'll look at it later in the day. I go, that was crazy.
My thing is, I'll try to be too edgy sometimes.
Yeah.
I'll be too edgy. I'll tweet something, and like 20 minutes later, I have no likes, nothing. I'm just like, this wasn't a good idea. I'll just delete it.
Well, this was a fail.
No one was really feeling it, or maybe it was the wrong time. And the thing is, like, I'll read it again. I'll be like, this really wasn't a good idea. I don't know why you thought that was a good idea.
Right. Or you'll tweet. There's times I tweet things and I'm like, okay, this is really good. This is like a short philosophical thing. It's going to go over really well. I know my followers, and I'll tweet it and it'll get like 20 likes. And I'll be like, wait a minute. This is the kind of content you guys like, right?
Right.
So I try to get away from that because it's really easy to fall into, like, I've been tweeting about masculinity a lot lately, but it's really easy to fall into just a pattern, like, well, this is what people want to hear, so I'm going to say it. And I do believe what I'm saying, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, no, I get that.
But, you slowly stop commenting on current events, and you don't pay attention to other things that you care about, like, the Article 13 stuff and free speech and stuff like that, which I was very vocal about in the beginning of starting my YouTube and my Twitter. So it's especially important, whether you have a following or not, to just try to remember that you're talking to other human beings and you are using this platform to spread ideas that you actually care about. Because that's what Twitter is to me.
It is.
Yeah, I post memes and funny stuff sometimes. But ultimately, Twitter was the place, and I tell people this and they don't believe me now that I have lots of followers, but Twitter is not even on my cosplay business cards because I had like less than 1,000 followers. I tweeted politics. I'm like, it was kind of just where I spout out my thoughts, and if people like them, whatever. If they don't, whatever. It's kind of like a drawing board for me. I'll just throw it and whatever. Maybe somebody will like it, maybe somebody won't. Maybe it's funny, maybe it's not. And now it's grown into this. People are actually paying attention. So I'm trying to really hard to keep it how I've always tried to keep it, which is this is what I'm thinking about this month. This is what I'm going to talk about, and try to make sure that I hate the idea of curating content. Well, I'm going to tailor it to, I've been accused, oh, well, you have a large male audience, so of course you're saying these things because you're appealing to the male audience. And I'm like, well, yeah, I have an audience, but also I just read Christina Hoff Sommers' book, The War Against Boys, and I'm pissed off.
Well,
I'm pissed.
Can I bring up some beef? I don't know if there's still beef between you and MJ.
Oh, I don't know. Apparently there is.
That's what I figured your response would be. Yeah. But I followed her for a little. I think I followed you both at the same time a while ago. But you want to talk about curated content? This is not a paid advertisement by Mack. This is my own opinion. She does curate the shit out of her content. That's why I stopped following her. Because the placating was just so... It's like, sometimes it seemed like it was groveling. It was like certain days she's like, hey, can I get 400 likes? Would have been the same tweet sometimes I'd seen. I can't speak on anything in particular because I'm generalizing. It's been a while since I followed. But that, to me, is a person that you actually had I didn't follow the beef, but apparently that you got called out for something or another.
Yeah, I made a misogynistic tweet.
Well, are you willing to get into it, or because I was going to get into more of what's wrong with her tweeting style, but it's up to you.
No, because I've kind of covered that.
That's fair.
I'm not curating content for men. Yes, it's like I pointed out earlier jokingly, hey, like 20-something% of my audience are women. I'm just saying.
Well, and you have to bring levity. Like, my problem with my YouTube channel to this point recently is I was doing it all by myself. I wasn't having guests on, and so I was way too serious. Like, yeah. I left all my old content up just because I'm not ashamed of where I've come from. There's stuff that I've had friends of mine be like, dude, you need to delete that. It looks like crap. Like,
same with my channel.
I'm like, I want people to know where I came from. Like, when I was afraid of, like, even going live. Like, I'll leave that up there. I don't care. But the whole point I was making in that is it's like freeing once you get to that point where you're just doing exactly what's on your mind and not, like you said, curating is the word. It's where you're wondering what people are going to like. It's not the point of what you're doing.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll make jokes.
And I don't mind losing followers. That's the other thing. So I don't mind losing followers. Yeah. If you can't stomach my content, it's good for both of us. Because I'm going to keep being me.
My favorite thing ever, I say this kind of sarcastically,
okay,
is when people like message my page or they tweet me and they're like, unfollowed. And they're like, post a screen cap of what I said. Or they'll directly respond to a tweet they didn't like and be like, I find this disgusting. I'm unfollowing. I'm like, okay, bye. Like, what?
Oh, shoot. Cass has been chatting with us and we have been ignoring him.
Oh, no. I feel so bad. Like, I'm not in this. Like I said, in a year and some months, I went from 1,000 or 2,000 to 13,000.
Yeah.
I'm going to continue to tweet what I want to tweet.
Hell yeah.
Because that's what I've always done.
Didn't you say you got retweeted by Cerno?
Oh, yeah. Cernovich retweets me all the time.
There you go. That's why I think you're mid-tier. I'll know I'm mid-tier once I get retweeted by someone.
Molyneux's retweeted me before too.
Oh.
And actually Michael Malice has retweeted me. Some fairly big accounts
have retweeted me. You seem ashamed to brag.
That's because some people don't like Molyneux.
Oh, no, Molyneux's cool.
I like him, but I met him actually.
Cass was just saying, I'm glad that I'm glad people had somewhat good reasons for joining Twitter. I only joined for seeing my friends' nudes, LOL. I literally wouldn't have been on here if it wasn't for that.
That's fair.
I remember I made my Twitter back when it first came out, and then I left it for years.
Yeah, let's see, I think I joined Twitter in 2009, so literally my freshman year of high school. So, I mean, yeah, I should honestly probably go back and delete all my cringy tweets.
August of 2009.
Yep, mine was April 2009. Oh my god, it's almost my Twitter. It's my Twitter anniversary this month.
Oh, you got to shorten it into one word, Twitterversary.
Twitterversary.
Yeah.
My God, that's 10 years, isn't it?
That's crazy. Mine's August of 2009, so it'll be in a couple months.
I don't like that.
Well, you know what's cool? You know what's cool is the fact that we have those old accounts. Like, I haven't been on Twitter for 10 years. I've been on Twitter for the better part of 1 year.
Yeah, that's
But the thing is, it's like when I look at certain people's accounts, is I'm seeing these people like, say, our age or maybe a little older, who like made an account in 2018. Like the account they're using.
Or like during the election or something.
Right. So when I look at some of these people, is that you can see the data was created. I'm like when I'm thinking about following someone back or something like that, and I see as a recently made account, I'm like, let me look at some of your content. Nope.
Gotta follow the OGs.
OGs. Well, the thing is, OGs, at least they got in early.
Yeah, I did.
It's not. It doesn't mean much besides that, but
No, it's just.
it means that they weren't coming in for the hype.
Right, because Twitter is kind of the place where you can just push off your content.
Yeah,
much.
my
Which
problem. I was just saying, my problem is the amount of people who have there's no dialogue. There's so many people that they're literally just. I don't have a name for it yet. I guess I should come up with one. It's like the one-way transmitters, where they're like, buy my book, buy my thing, buy this.
It's like they use Twitter
It's
instead of as a
free
social
advertisement.
media. It's like a bulletin board for them.
Yeah.
Like they're just like, here it is.
Right. I'm sure they like turn off notifications too.
Yeah, I've had people ask me before, do you sleep? And I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
"Why?" And then I realize it's because well, first of all, no, not really. I'm a night owl. It's something that I'm trying to fix. And I even tweeted a few
Well, that's why
weeks ago.
I felt socially obligated to ask you if you wanted to get off earlier. I wasn't sure if you were as much of a night owl as I am.
Oh, no, I am.
Okay.
Totally. Up probably till 1. If we hopped off right now, I'd be up till 1 anyway. So,
Yeah.
probably do something far less interesting. Probably just like scrolling through Twitter.
Well, chances are good. What I would do is scroll through Twitter and have rewatch this on my second screen.
Just it would be one of those things where I say, "Oh yeah, gotta go to sleep for work," and then you'd see me tweeting.
Right. Well, that's a funny issue with people in our generation is someone will text you and be like, "Hey, I'm going to bed," and then they're sharing stuff on Instagram or whatever. It's like, oh, I thought you were asleep.
Yeah, and my Twitter's always been public too. That's another thing.
My Twitter's always been public as well. Oh no, I think for a little bit at the very beginning I had it private because someone told me I should, and then I was like, wait a minute, I'm a libertarian.
Honestly, I'm kind of surprised I got hired at the serving job that I was working at.
Because why?
With my Twitter. Like, clearly they didn't look at my Twitter because the two brothers that ran the restaurant are from San Francisco.
Oh shit.
And which is cool. Like,
yeah.
It was great. Like Mexicali taco food, I still crave it, and I'm like, I can't. Like, that's the reason.
Well, I don't want to completely dox myself at my workplace, but I work at a deep dish place in downtown Chicago. Yeah. It's actually, I gotta say, if you're a people watcher, if you're an amateur sociologist like I am, it is the best petri dish of all time.
Oh, I bet.
I get international people, tourists, you get the South Side Chicago people, you get the North Side Chicago people, just tourists from all over the country. I get people from Iowa, everywhere. It's so cool. I get people, I'm checking their IDs, they're handing me passports. I'm like, this is the best.
Yeah, the restaurant that I worked for, one of the managers that we hired shortly after I started working there, I worked there for about a year and a half, hung up a sign. And basically it said that we weren't allowed to call people gender in exclusive pronouns. We had to say folks or I just went with y'all, to be honest.
Yeah.
People are like, why do you say y'all? You're
I say folks a lot.
You're not from the South. Folks felt weird to me, but y'all felt more natural. So I even had a couple in from Texas once, and they're like, are you trying to adapt to our accents? And I was like, no, I have this gender policy, and I'm not allowed to call you ladies or gentlemen, and so I have to say y'all because it's the only thing that feels more natural than hi folks. Like, I feel like I'm Urkel or something.
Well, I'll say this. This is how I normally speak, obviously, but when I'm serving, I'll throw a little bit of my Ohio accent. It just makes people feel a little more comfortable, a little homier. How's everyone doing today? Just because the thing is, it's like no matter where you're from, if you're from the Midwest or you're from it just makes everyone feel a little more comfortable, you know. Even if you're of a darker shade of skin, they don't care. I'm just a cowboy.
Nope.
I'm just here getting you some pizza, some wings, going to Mountain Dew while you're at it. Here, come on over. You know, it just disarms people.
You're from Ohio originally.
Yes, that's where I grew up.
Do you say pop or soda?
I'm a normal person. I say pop.
My friend, I have actually the best man in our wedding is from Ohio as well. We met him through like card games that we would travel and play.
Yeah.
And he is so angry. We went up there a few weeks ago to Jungle Gyms, that big grocery store.
Yeah,
and
I've heard of it.
There's a pop section, and I've learned when I'm there to say pop, otherwise people look at you like you have 6 heads.
No,
even
the
in
worst.
Indiana,
There's people who call all sodas Coke. That drives me nuts.
Georgia.
Are they from
Big
Georgia?
fat Georgia.
Oh,
I was in Georgia for
up a wall.
I was in Georgia for the Denver Panthers Super Bowl with my friend from Ohio who calls it pop. So we say soda where I'm from, and he says pop. And the lady comes to the table, is like, "What kind of Coke do you want?" I'm like, "Oh man, I hate Coca-Cola." I'm like, "Do you have Dr. Pepper?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "But she said Coke."
That's a
like,
Pepsi product.
what? And they looked at me like you had 6 heads because they call everything Coke down there. But that's where Coca-Cola is headquartered. So it makes sense. But and a few of my friends from Texas call everything Coke too.
That drives me nuts. Well, the worst thing is the restaurant I work at, we have Pepsi products, right? So I'm used to the spiel. Hold on, Cass is saying my mom is originally from northern Kentucky and listened to country music when I was growing up. My grandma said pop. That's Atlanta with the Coke. Atlanta's with the Coke, apparently. That's where the headquarters is.
It's just Atlanta.
I don't know. That's what Cass is saying. I'm just chiming in.
Yeah, it's Atlanta. That's where the Coca-Cola place is. And that's where I was in Georgia. It was Atlanta, Georgia. So that makes sense.
Oh, okay. But here's one issue I run into all the time serving is like, you know, you have to be a little preemptive with serving. You have to tell people or else they'll just meander and be like, well, yeah. You have to like, you kind of have to tell them what they want. And then they'll be like, oh, that. It's not malicious. It's just like, I've done this.
Yep.
So I tell them, be like, all right, can I get you anything to drink? We have Pepsi products, tea, lemonade. They're like, Coke, Diet Coke? Like, Pepsi products. And I'll literally try to say it as uncondescendingly as possible.
Right, because people get mad.
Right. And then people will be like, do you have cherry Coke?
Like, that's Coca-Cola.
I just said Pepsi products. And then they'll be like, okay, Sprite? Like Sierra Mist? They're like, oh, I don't want Sierra Mist. I'm like, it's literally the same.
They're like, it's the same.
It's the same thing. I had someone literally, Sunday was the last time I worked. I told her, I was like, she said, I'll have a Sprite. I was like, okay, I'll get you a Sierra Mist. She's like, oh no. She's like dramatic about it. I'm like, lady, it's the same thing. If I said Sprite, if I said it was Sprite and I brought it out, you wouldn't have even noticed.
No, you could have just, yeah. No,
anyway, this is becoming a server rant and
yeah. Well, cultural differences.
Cultural differences. Well, that last bit was that was straight server rant.
I get it though. I get it.
Yeah. Always tip 20%.
Well, yeah, you have to be a really bad service person to not get tipped by me.
Oh yeah. And the funny thing is, I've made some mistakes. I've only been at this job for just over a month, and the funny thing is, some of the mistakes I've made were some of the people that tipped me the most. I was like,
yeah, because they're like, oh, he's having a bad day.
Right. Well, and the thing is, I'm the kind of person where like like I won't when I make a mistake, you'll know that like I felt bad. Like I'm not coming out of some like pity. I'm like, oh, I fucked up, and that's I don't know. I don't think all servers have that either. Like that pride in.
No, some people will try to hide it, and they'll be like, and I hate when people. This is a pet peeve.
Mm-hmm.
I hate when people blame the kitchen when it's not.
The kitchen. Yeah.
I'm like, now people are never gonna come here again because they think the kitchen is bad and they don't know what they're doing. When you just rang the wrong thing in, just be like, that's on me.
You nailed it. You nailed it exactly why.
Because I've worked with people like that, and I become friends with the kitchen, which is what you should do.
Always. Free food.
And it's like, well, bring it back to politics. Take responsibility. What are you doing? You did something wrong. Just take responsibility for it. Most people will understand unless you try to hide it. and they'll be like, "Hey, this person's sketchy."
I go TMI. Like I'm like Howdy Doody, where I'm just like, listen, there's a button on the computer where like if it's here and I hit the other one, that's what happened. My bad. My man would be like, why'd you tell him that? I'd be like, I wanted to. That's it. I don't have a better explanation. It's the truth, you know. Shoot.
Right.
I don't really think there's such thing as TMI. Like I'll have people tell me a story and they'll get into detail. And when someone's getting too much into detail, like some people are like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting too into it. It's like, I realize that you're just enjoying telling that story, that you're like not leaving out details, because this obviously means a lot to you, that you remembered more details than just your standard run of the mill stuff. And maybe you could have organized your story a little better, where you're keeping it to the main points, but I don't know. I think people get cut off too often because everyone's just trying to be efficient in their daily lives. But it's going on 11:15, and Cass says Sierra Mist Sprite is the same. 7-Up tastes different. At least that's what I remember.
I couldn't tell you the last time I had 7-Up.
Me neither.
I don't think 7-Up exists anymore.
I remember they used to be all over the commercials in the 90s. I remember growing up, they had the little red dude, little red dot. I remember they had a commercial where they had the song Wipeout and he was like surfing.
7-Up doesn't exist anymore.
I don't know. The thing is, everything I Google shows up on the screen, so I just
kidding.
clicked
it. Does.
Yep. It
What
is.
something they got rid of something. Is it Sierra Mist isn't called Sierra Mist anymore. It's called like Ice or something.
No, it's Sierra Mist.
Yes. I don't know.
They rebranded in 2016 to Mist Twist, which was reverted it was reverted back in 2018.
Yeah, because they were everyone was probably like, "What the hell is that?"
Right. That's
I change it.
That's an interesting phenomenon that people have, like when they just rebrand things. For like sometimes you need a rebranding, but there's certain brands that are strong enough, and when they rebrand, I'm like, what were you doing?
Right.
You know?
Get it.
It's like when a team like trades one of their best players and then they get someone worse back. I'm like, why? You know?
Yeah, like you trading away Mack. What are you doing? Now being a Chiefs fan, I'm like, yeah, trade away Khalil
Hey,
Mack.
as a fair-weather Bears fan, I'm not complaining.
Well, my fiance's a Packers fan,
Oh.
so I'm complaining.
Well,
It was good for me, but
not
not good for him.
he's going to be in a world of hurt for a while.
Ooh, yeah.
I don't think that franchise is... They're going to be worse than the Browns for a minute.
Yeah, they're going to need some restructuring. That's for sure.
But I think talking about Sierra Mist and NFL gets us completely off topic enough where we should probably wrap up. But it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. This was great. We talked about a lot more than gender, which is awesome.
Yeah,
I'm not opposed to it.
we talked about a hell of a lot of things, and I'm glad to have everyone on who's still been following. Cass, man, you've been you've been with us for so long. Hey, the Raiders needed draft picks. They did. They got a rebuild.
Yeah.
But to anyone who's still with us, please like and subscribe to the channel. I think Mackenzie and I, we talked about doing this again. We'll see how long until we do. But yeah, we'll keep you posted on Twitter and see about doing it again.
Always.